Just retired, I was squeezed dry by a beautiful woman. Song Feng rejected the title of Northern Border War God and quietly returned to Qingzhou, driven by a blood feud from years ago. Little did he know, before he even got off the train, a wealthy and beautiful woman had already taken him. As he left, she tossed him 1,000 yuan, but the story was only just beginning. The Z99 green train, departing from the northwest, clattered on for more than 30 hours before finally entering the Qingzhou territory. In the soft sleeper carriage. 5 years, it seems Qingzhou hasn't changed much, Song Feng muttered as he gazed out the window. Creak. The door to their compartment opened. A tall woman wearing a duckbill cap walked in. Her face was obscured by large sunglasses and a mask, making it impossible to tell who she was. Her long legs, wrapped in light blue jeans, were shapely and slender. She sat by the window, holding a half-pack of spicy snacks. Glancing around cautiously, she took out her phone and quickly replied to a message. Covering up yet always alert. Song Feng glanced at her, thinking to himself, this woman doesn't look like a good person. At that moment, the loudspeaker in the compartment announced, important news. Just now, the Northwest Military Region reported that the title of Northern Border War God was to be granted to the Wolf King, but due to his sudden and unauthorized retirement, the ceremony was cancelled. Additionally, the news continued, but Song Feng got up and clicked off the speaker. What are you doing? The woman slammed the table, removing her sunglasses, glaring at Song Feng in anger. This is important news. Why did you turn it off? Song Feng grinned lazily and said, it's just some irrelevant person retiring and going home, what's the big deal? That is the Wolf King. Our country's youngest soldier king. Her beautiful eyes flared with anger, her long legs shot straight up. His presence has kept the Northwest peaceful for 30 years. He was supposed to be the youngest war god, but now he's suddenly retired. There's definitely some conspiracy behind this. Someone is deliberately targeting him. You just said he is a soldier king, who would dare to target him? Song Feng shrugged and lazily replied, maybe he just missed home and wants revenge. Anyway, this has nothing to do with you or me. You should focus on yourself. Like your forehead's red, you might have some blood disaster coming. Shut up, you think I won't cuff you? Duan Ran snapped, her long, fair hand instinctively reaching for her waist. As a top anti-pickpocket officer in Qingzhou, she couldn't tolerate being teased by a rough man, especially when the Northwest Wolf King was her idol, the man she dreamed of marrying. How could she tolerate him being slandered? Song Feng shook his head helplessly. Didn't listen to good advice, now you'll suffer. You're no good guy. You? But before Duan Ran could finish, a screw fell from the wooden table in front of her, causing it to tilt. The water jug on the table suddenly crashed onto her toe. Ouch, my foot! Duan Ran quickly took off her sneakers. Inside, her small, white, delicate foot was revealed. A bloodstain appeared on her little toe. She gasped in pain and wrapped her mask around her toe. Song Feng glanced at her, mildly surprised. He hadn't expected this fiery woman to be so beautiful. Her face was as smooth as silver moon, with willow brows, phoenix eyes, a slightly upturned nose, and pink lips like a freshly cut peach. Your mouth is jinxed. Ouch, it hurts so much. Duan Ran looked up, glaring at Song Feng, then grabbed the spicy snacks and bit into them, seemingly to relieve the pain. Har har har. Seeing this, Song Feng couldn't help but burst out laughing. Young lady, you should calm that temper of yours, even the table is protesting. Duan Ran ignored him, but just then, her phone buzzed. She picked it up, and a deep, husky male voice came through, remember, according to the plan, start the operation immediately. Duan Ran's expression grew serious. She ignored the pain, carefully stuffed the remaining snacks into her pocket, put on her shoes, and checked her gear. Song Feng, sitting beside her, furrowed his brows when he saw her expression. He cleared his throat and said, you, spicy snacks lady, your eyes are showing signs of impending disaster. You might not want to go through with this operation. If you do, not only will you face danger, but you'll also lose your virtue and end up in bed with some man. Upon hearing this, Duan Ran angrily grabbed the water jug and threw it at him. Shut up, if you curse me again, I'll cuff you right now. You make me so mad. She cursed and put on her sunglasses, quickly leaving the compartment. Why don't you listen to me? What a shame, such a beautiful lady, and I wonder which wild boar will get to her first, Song Feng sighed, not paying much attention to it as he gazed out the window, lost in thought. 5 years ago, the Song family house in Qingzhou was set on fire. His father, grandfather, and all 15 members of the Song family perished in the flames. Song Feng, a student at Qingzhou University at the time, was hunted down and nearly died. After escaping, he fled to the northwest, where he stumbled upon the ancestral dragon towning tower at the foot of Kunlun Mountain, gaining dragon blood and the legacy of the ancestor witch. He enlisted in the military and rose through the ranks, eventually becoming known as the Wolf King of the Northwest, and was set to be awarded the title of Northern Border War God. But his family's revenge was not yet taken, and Song Feng was not willing to spend his life guarding the Northwest. So, he forcibly retired and quietly left, returning to Qingzhou for revenge. Of course, he also wanted to repay the person who once saved his life. Leaning against the window, the clattering of the train's wheels filled his ears as his thoughts swirled. Meanwhile, in the second-to-last carriage, Duan Ran kicked open the compartment door and rushed in. But in the next moment, a pink mist suddenly assaulted her. Duan Ran had no time to defend herself as the mist hit her skin and entered her nostrils. Har har har. As expected of Qingzhou's best detective, those long legs have some real power. Today, we really got lucky. Har har har, we're in for a treat. Inside the compartment, 3 sturdy men leered at her, completely unfazed. They were clearly confident they had already won. Duan Ran was stunned. We've been waiting for you, little girl. The tall man at the front sneered, you really think you can catch the 3 of us, the Pangolin brothers? We've known all your moves from the start. Upon hearing this, Duan Ran realized her team's actions had been compromised. According to the intel, there should only have been 1 round-faced pangolin in this compartment. But now, all 3 of them were here, and they had already set up strange powders in advance. However, Duan Ran didn't back down. Whoosh! She drew a knife from her waist with her left hand and gripped her pistol with the right, her cold eyes narrowing. Just perfect, I'll catch all of you at once. The tall pangolin burst out laughing. Beautiful lady, since we dared to wait for you here, we're absolutely confident we can handle you. We know you're skilled, but today, no matter how strong you are, you'll only end up as our plaything. Chapter 2, The Poor Relatives. The Pangolin brothers burst into laughter, their expressions full of pride. Duan Ran gritted her teeth and was about to take action against the 3 men when suddenly, a heat surged in her dantian, and all the internal energy within her body vanished. In the next moment, her entire body became weak and limp, her arms fell to her sides, and the gun in her hand clattered to the floor. The long-faced pangolin sneered lecherously, this is the expensive chi-dissolving aphrodisiac powder, specifically designed to target female martial artists. Miss Duan, I bet you're feeling quite desperate now, huh? Har har har. Duan Ran's heart filled with fear, mixed with confusion. She had always thought that these pangolin brothers were merely thieves, fond of stealing cultural relics from museums. But she never expected them to be so knowledgeable about martial artists and to have access to such rare and expensive chi-dissolving aphrodisiac powder. Duan Ran stopped hesitating. She quickly took a blood-red pill from her inner pocket, stuffed it into her mouth, and bit down hard. Crack! With the sound of something breaking, her eyes instantly turned blood red, and blue veins bulged out on her fair skin. Shua! Duan Ran leaped into action, her dagger aimed directly at the long-faced pangolin. PSHH. With a swift strike, she sliced through the pangolin's neck, and he fell to the ground, lifeless. The other 2 men were stunned by the sudden attack. Both of them immediately rushed to their window, and with a loud crash, they broke the glass and scrambled out of the train, fleeing into the night. Who? Duan Ran breathed heavily. She didn't have time to deal with the aftermath and stumbled back toward her compartment. The blood-red pill, known as the blood-killing pill, was something she had stolen from her grandfather. She had planned to sell it for some quick cash, but little did she know it would save her life today. The blood-killing pill could forcibly activate her fighting potential, but its effects were short-lived. After 1 minute, she would be as vulnerable as a lamb to the slaughter. What made matters worse was that she could barely suppress the explosive desire building within her body. Her thoughts turned to Song Feng. That guy seemed lazy, carefree, and reckless, but he had predicted 2 things correctly, so he might have some ability to protect her temporarily. At this very moment, not far from her, Song Feng was lazily lying on his bed with a slight sigh. He glanced over at Duan Ran's bunk, disappointed. What a shame. A woman this beautiful. I wonder which pig's going to have her. Bang! Before Song Feng could finish muttering to himself, the compartment door was kicked open. Duan ran staggered into the room. Huh? You're back? Song Feng sat up in surprise. Could it be that my fortune-telling skills have deteriorated? Did I read it wrong? Duan Ran looked at the carefree yet undeniably handsome face before her. She could no longer hold herself back and immediately threw herself at Song Feng. Hum. Song Feng tried to resist, but in an instant, Duan Ran had him pinned down. Clang, clang, clang. The green train rumbled slowly, its body swaying as it entered a tunnel. The surroundings plunged into darkness. In the compartment where Song Feng was, only the loud rumbles and howling sounds of the train filled the air. 20 minutes later, the green train slowly arrived at the station. Inside the soft sleeper compartment, Duan Ran climbed up, relieved. She wiped the sweat from her forehead, glanced at Song Feng, and said, "Kid, let's just call today a dream. Once we get off the train, we won't know each other anymore." Song Feng looked extremely aggrieved. He clutched the torn fabric of his clothes tightly, sulking as he said, "You make it sound so easy, but I've kept my chastity for 26 years, and now you've ruined me. Woo-woo, and now you want to pretend like it never happened. You." Duan Ran's face turned purple with rage. She glanced at the faint bloodstains on the bed, furious as she cursed, "I didn't hold it against you, and now you're the one complaining. Take this 1,000 yuan. We're even now." She threw a stack of red bills at him, quickly limping away from the compartment. She was incredibly frustrated. What was supposed to be a simple capture mission had turned into this. Not only had she lost her dignity for nothing, but now Song Feng had also mocked her. Damn it, what the hell, how could he be so strong? It hurts like hell. Duan Ran gripped the railing and limped toward the train door. She had no intention of facing Song Feng again. It was too awkward. Inside the compartment, Song Feng counted the money in his hand 3 times. Only 900 yuan. Women really can't be trusted. The more beautiful they are, the more they lie. He stuffed the 900 yuan into his pocket. This was money he earned through his own labor, so he was perfectly comfortable with it. Clang! The train finally stopped at the station. The door opened. Song Feng grabbed his olive green travel bag and stepped off the train, exiting the station. A crowd of black market taxi drivers immediately swarmed around him. Song Feng picked one of them and got into the dilapidated cherry car. He said, "Take me to the villa at the top of the mountain in the Houting community." The driver froze for a moment when he heard the destination. He couldn't help but glance at Song Feng through the rearview mirror, then forced a smile and said, "Oh, young man, that villa is one of the most famous mansions in Qingzhou, worth over 80 million. It's owned by Zhao Hu, the richest man in Qingzhou. Are you his rural relative?" Song Feng sat in the backseat, a cold smile creeping onto his lips. He had returned for revenge. 5 years ago, his father and grandfather built the Song family into Qingzhou's richest family from scratch. But a fire destroyed everything, and the entire Song family perished in the flames. Zhao Hu was an executive under the Song family's conglomerate, and it was he who led the men to chase down Song Feng and try to erase the Song family from existence. Now, Zhao Hu had become Qingzhou's richest man, but that was only because he had stolen and taken over the assets that rightfully belonged to the Song family. "I'm not his relative. I'm here to send him on his way," Song Feng said lightly. The driver chuckled and said, "So you're the driver he hired. I thought you got lucky and became a relative of the richest man. Turns out we're in the same line of work. But you're better than me, at least you get to drive for a billionaire. TSK TSK." The talkative driver kept chatting, and 20 minutes later, his car arrived at Houting Manor. "Look, that's the famous mountaintop villa." The driver pointed to a massive, luxurious villa on the hillside not far away. Song Feng took a glance, his figure flashing as he disappeared from the backseat of the taxi. Revenge. He could hardly wait. Chapter 3, Not Letting Anyone Escape. On the hillside, inside a massive luxury villa, 2 enormous pit bulls were struggling and growling fiercely, restrained by heavy chains. Their bloodshot eyes were locked onto a 3-year-old child standing just half a meter away, drooling from their mouths. The child was smeared with the scent of roasted meat. Sitting opposite these dogs, a young man in floral shorts, holding a champagne glass, was laughing triumphantly. This was Zhao Tiger's son, Zhao Feilong. Kneeling beside Zhao Feilong was an elderly man with white hair and a bloated, battered body. Zhao Feilong glanced at the old man and spoke coldly, "Old fool, if you don't start talking, I'll let these two beauties loose. They've been starving for a day and a night, and they are itching to eat some meat. Your grandson's tender skin will be a real treat for them. Young Master Zhao, please, I beg you. Spare my grandson. I truly don't know where the USB drive is. I'm just a cook from the Song family, I don't have what you're looking for," the elderly man, Qingzhou, continued kowtowing, his head bleeding and his body trembling. Zhao Feilong sneered. He grabbed Qingzhou by the hair, saying, "If you don't know anything, then what use are you alive? You and your grandson will go feed the dogs." With a sudden yank, Zhao Feilong ripped out a chunk of Qingzhou's hair, along with a piece of bloody scalp. Qingzhou screamed in agony. With all his strength, he tried to rise, filled with a fierce resolve to protect his grandson. "Zhao Feilong, I'll fight you to the death." Zhao Feilong laughed cruelly. As a martial artist, how could the elderly, injured Qingzhou be his opponent? With a powerful kick, Zhao Feilong sent Qingzhou flying, and he landed right in front of the two ravenous pit bulls. Arg! The two dogs, their eyes bloodshot with hunger, lunged at Qingzhou. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of Qingzhou, delivering two swift kicks to the dogs' necks. Crack! Crack! The dogs' necks snapped, and they fell lifeless to the ground. The person who appeared was none other than Song Feng. Song Feng looked at Qingzhou, who was lying on the ground, his anger only growing. Zhao Tiger, that bastard, had already killed 15 members of the Song family, and now, he didn't even spare the cook from their household. Who are you? How dare you meddle in my business? And you killed my dogs, you're looking for death. Zhao Feilong roared, standing up. At the same time, two elder bodyguards in the realm of martial artists appeared behind Zhao Feilong, flanking him with vigilant expressions, watching Song Feng closely. Song Feng glanced at Zhao Feilong and the two bodyguards without showing any signs of emotion, as if he were looking at three dead men. Meanwhile, Qingzhou, lying on the ground, lifted his head and saw the person beside him. His eyes widened with disbelief. It was Song Feng. Tears of joy instantly filled Qingzhou's eyes. Grabbing Song Feng's pants leg, he sobbed, "Young Master Song, you shouldn't have come here. They are still hunting for you. They haven't given up. You must run, quickly." Song Feng helped Qingzhou to his feet and gently shook his head. "Uncle Du, I'm here for revenge. I'm sorry you got caught up in this." Wiping away his tears, Qingzhou sighed deeply. "Young Master Song, Zhao Tiger is now one of the most powerful figures in Jiang province. His bodyguards are incredibly strong. There's no way to get revenge. My grandson, my poor grandson." Qingzhou rushed over to untie his grandson. At this moment, Zhao Feilong burst into gleeful laughter from across the room. Pointing at Song Feng, he laughed so hard he could barely catch his breath. "So it's you, Song Feng. You're the son of Song Shu. Har har har, this is perfect. I've been looking for you everywhere, and now you've delivered yourself right to me. Looks like I, Zhao Feilong, am about to make a great achievement. My father is going to be so proud of me." Song Feng's expression was ice cold as he walked toward Zhao Feilong. "You're Zhao Tiger's son. Where is your father?" Zhao Feilong arrogantly laughed, "Don't worry, after I cut off your limbs, I'll take you to see my father." Har har har. Song Feng's gaze grew colder. "Fine, if your father isn't here, I'll start by killing you, and offer your death as a tribute to the souls of the Song family." Har. You think you can kill me? Har har har. Li Bo, Zhao Bo, capture him. Zhao Feilong shouted triumphantly. His two bodyguards, masters in the martial artist realm, were more than enough to handle someone like Song Feng. Zhao Feilong wasn't the least bit worried. The two elder bodyguards immediately lunged at Song Feng. With a flick of his wrist, Song Feng casually raised his hand toward the two bodyguards' heads, as though swatting away flies. But this simple motion was enough to send both of them crashing to the ground, unable to dodge in time. Crack! Crack! The sound of their skulls being crushed rang out. Without giving the two men's bodies another glance, Song Feng stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Zhao Feilong. Zhao Feilong stood frozen, shocked. He never imagined that two martial artist masters would fall so easily before Song Feng, as though they were mere watermelons with no resistance. Thud. Zhao Feilong collapsed to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. Song Feng. Please don't kill me. It was all my father's orders. If you spare my life, I'll take you to find him. I can help you deal with that bastard. With a snap, Song Feng crushed Zhao Feilong's neck without hesitation. Du Kanshou, holding his grandson, saw this scene unfold before him, tears streaming down his face as he exclaimed, "Young Master Song, you're so strong now. The Song family is saved. Thank you, thank you. I'm so happy." Song Feng walked over to Du Kanshou and asked, "Uncle Du, why did the Zhao family want to capture you? You were just a cook for the Song family, why didn't they spare you?" Du Kanshou let out a long sigh, his voice filled with sorrow. "Young Master Song, you don't know. It wasn't just me, all the servants, the bodyguards, and the maids who once worked for the Song family are dead at the hands of the Zhao family. Even the executives and secretaries who worked for the Song group, they are all dead. All of them mysteriously killed." What? Song Feng's anger surged within him. Du Kanshou continued, "Zhao Feilong captured my grandson and tried to force me to reveal the whereabouts of the USB drive containing the Neuro Super Resolution Neurotransmitter gene sequence, but I didn't know what that was. When I couldn't tell him, he killed my son and the rest of my family. He is a monster." Song Feng stood frozen for a moment, his face darkening further. Neuro Super Resolution Neurotransmitter gene sequence. Chapter 4, just the beginning. Song Feng furrowed his brow slightly. He remembered that his father's pharmaceutical company used to research this very thing. It was said that it could help paralyzed patients walk again and even extend the lives of the elderly. Could it be that Zhao who burned down the Song family just for this research? At this moment, sirens blared outside. Du Kanshou's expression stiffened, and he quickly said, "Young Master Song, you should leave. You just killed Zhao Feilong, and you can't afford to be caught." Song Feng nodded. He didn't want to expose himself just yet. Of course, Song Feng wasn't afraid of Zhao Hu or concerned about being captured. His main worry was that if he revealed himself now, people from the northwest would come after him, trying to push him into accepting the title of Northern Battlefield God. He wouldn't leave Qingzhou city, nor would he become the Northern Battlefield God, not until he had avenged his family. "Uncle Du, don't worry," Song Feng said. "Zhao Hu will fall soon. I will compensate you for everything." With that, Song Feng disappeared in a flash, leaving Du Kanshou stunned. He rubbed his eyes. Song Feng had been right in front of him a moment ago. How had he vanished so quickly? Could it be that young Master Song has learned some kind of divine art? With this in mind, Du Kanshou felt hope for the first time. The Song family's vengeance might finally be avenged. By the time Song Feng reached the entrance of the luxury estate, a large number of police officers had already surrounded the area. Song Feng appeared calm as he walked through the police cordon. He sighed inwardly. It was unfortunate he couldn't find Zhao Hu this time. From Zhao Feilong's words, Zhao Hu had gone abroad and it was unclear when he would return. But when he learned that his son had died in Qingzhou city, he would definitely rush back. Song Feng decided to stay in Qingzhou and wait for Zhao Hu to come back, ready to send him to his death. Leaving the estate, Song Feng stood by the roadside and pulled out his phone. When he unlocked it, the wallpaper displayed the photo of a woman. The woman was in her early 20s, with a beautiful, fresh face and clear, innocent eyes. "Suran, I'm coming to find you." Song Feng smiled as he looked at the photo. Years ago, Zhao Hu had sent people to hunt him down. Shot in the abdomen, he had jumped into the Qingzhou River, barely surviving. It was Suran, a medical student at the time, who had pulled him from the river. She had hidden him in a small, abandoned clinic, using expired medicines and rusted equipment to treat his gunshot wound. She saved his life and put him on a coal train heading for the northwest. Now, 5 years had passed. How was that sweet, pure, and kind-hearted girl doing? Song Feng put the phone back in his pocket and decided to rest for the night. Tomorrow, he would go to Qingzhou Medical University to inquire about Suran's whereabouts. At that moment, a police motorcycle stopped nearby. The woman on the bike took off her helmet, shaking her long hair free. She was beautiful, with a slender figure and long legs that drew the attention of every man around. She hung her helmet on the handlebars and took out some spicy strips, eating them with audible slurps. Song Feng's eyes lit up with surprise as he quickly waved his arm. Hey, what a coincidence! Spicy strip girl, I need your help. The woman turned and saw it was Song Feng. Her face grew embarrassed and annoyed. She revved the engine and was about to leave. Don't go. It's me. Don't you recognize me just because I'm wearing clothes? Song Feng called out loudly. Everyone around turned to look, whispering and gossiping. The people nearby were especially curious, their eyes glinting with gossip. The woman, Duan Ran, was furious and her face turned dark. She quickly turned the motorcycle around and stopped in front of Song Feng. Gritting her teeth, she whispered, "What do you want? Do you believe I'll arrest you right now?" Song Feng laughed, pulling out his phone and waving Su Ran's photo. "I'm looking for someone, but I don't know where to start. You're a police officer, so you're the perfect person to ask for help." Duan Ran scoffed. "It's too late today. I'll help you tomorrow. See you. Don't go. I know you have a mole on your chest, but I don't know your name or number. How will I find you next time? Don't tell me tomorrow is just an excuse." Song Feng grabbed her arm and didn't let go. Duan Ran's face turned green with anger. She bit her lip and growled, "Let go of me. I already gave you 1,000 yuan when you got off the train. Don't push your luck." "Heh, you're wrong. It was T1,000, it was only 900. Song Feng said seriously. More and more people gathered around, and several officers from the police station also noticed the commotion. After all, who wouldn't be interested in the gossip about Qingzhou's famous flower of the police force? Duan Ran, seeing the crowd and hearing Song Feng's shameless words, was forced to give in. She quickly said, Fine. Get on the bike. I'll take you to check." Song Feng jumped onto the motorcycle behind her. Duan Ran smiled at her colleagues. "This is my cousin. He has come to Qingzhou to work and is staying with me. You guys help me cover for him. I'll go take care of him." With that, Duan Ran revved the engine and drove off, taking Song Feng with her. On the way, Song Feng wrapped his arm around Duan Ran's waist and asked, "What is going on at the luxury estate? What mission are you on?" Duan Ran snorted. "Top secret. But since you're asking, Zhao Hu's son is in trouble. Zhao Hu is not only the richest man in Qingzhou but also a big shot in Jiang province. Now that his son is in trouble here, we have our hands full. Keep your hands to yourself." Song Feng nodded and didn't press further. By the time they reached the police station, it was already 5:30 p.m. Duan Ran made a phone call, then looked at Song Feng with a helpless expression. "The household registration department is already closed. You'll have to wait until tomorrow for me to help you find out more." "Then what if you leave?" Song Feng immediately shook his head. "How about this? I don't have a place to stay. Why don't I sleep at your place tonight? Dream on." Duan Ran glared at Song Feng, then pointed across the street to a hotel. "Come on, I'll take you to get a room. You know where I work now, so you shouldn't worry about me running off." They entered the hotel, and Song Feng used his ID to check in. While paying, he looked at Duan Ran. Duan Ran froze, then her eyebrows twisted with frustration. "What, you want me to pay for the room? Believe me, I'll kick you into a garbage bin right now." Song Feng pouted. "I thought your department would reimburse you. Besides, this hotel is a rip-off. It costs 500 a night, and I only made 900 this morning. It's really a shame." With a resigned sigh, Song Feng paid. Duan Ran's face darkened, clearly not wanting to deal with him. She grumpily took out more spicy strips and started chewing them, as though she were venting her frustration on them. At that moment, her phone rang. Duan Ran answered, and a deep, steady voice came through the speaker. "Xiao Ran, come to Blue Mountain Cafe. I found the source of the train operation leak." Duan Ran immediately replied, "Got it, Team Leader Liu. I'll be there in 5 minutes." She hung up the phone and turned to Song Feng. "Stay here, I'll come find you tomorrow." With that, she turned to leave. Song Feng's eyes darkened as he grabbed her arm. "Beautiful, your face doesn't look too good. You're not just going to lose your purity, you're in for a big disaster." Chapter 5, A Heart as Black as Night. When Duan Ran heard Song Feng's words, she could no longer contain the anger bubbling inside her. Her long fingers twisted Song Feng's ear. "Are you not finished yet? Are you trying to annoy me to death?" Song Feng shook his head, then grabbed Duan Ran's small hand and said, "I'm not joking. After you finished the call, your face changed. So, you need to be careful." Duan Ran was stunned, looking at Song Feng's serious expression, and she began to take him seriously. After all, this crow's mouth had accurately predicted the 2 previous bloody disasters. She thought for a moment and said, "How about this? I'll take you to the coffee shop. If there's any danger, you can help me call for backup." Song Feng nodded. "Sure, but you're paying for dinner. Forget it. You're such a miser, always looking for ways to save." Duan Ran pulled Song Feng and left the Foreseas Hotel, getting on her motorcycle. The 2 of them headed straight for the Blue Mountain Cafe. When they arrived outside the cafe, Duan Ran jumped off the motorcycle. "I'm going to the 2nd floor of the cafe. You stay downstairs and order a coffee. If anything happens, remember to call for help." Song Feng nodded. "Okay, but you're paying for my coffee." "Got it, you stingy ghost," Duan Ran said as she swung her long legs and made her way toward the 2nd floor. The 2nd floor was near the innermost private room, a common meeting point for the operation team. About half a month ago, there had been a large-scale antique theft case in Qingzhou City and nearby cities. Liu Lihua, from the Jinling Provincial Department, had led a special operation team, which included elites from Qingzhou, Wuxi, and Changsha. Together, they formed a team to tackle the antique thefts. Liu Lihua was the team leader, an expert from the provincial capital. He had a high rank and was also Duan Ran's mentor when she first joined the force, so Duan Ran respected him deeply. Inside the private room, Liu Lihua was sitting at the table, sipping an American coffee. Duan Ran sat down across from him, clenched her fists, and said, "Team leader Liu, this train operation was definitely leaked. The only ones who knew about it were our 7 team members, so the traitor has to be one of us." Liu Lihua nodded, touching his coffee cup. "Xiao Ran, you were trained by me. Though you're young and lack experience, you have a solid foundation, and you're a martial artist. I've always had high hopes for you. I'm sorry that this operation leaked and caused the deaths of 2 team members, putting you in danger." Duan Ran shook her head, her eyes reddening. She gritted her teeth and said, "Master, I will catch the traitor." Liu Lihua stood up and called the waiter to bring another cup of coffee. He put his hands behind his back and said, "Drink some coffee to calm your emotions." Duan Ran shook her head with a bitter smile. "I don't like bitter coffee." Liu Lihua laughed heartily. "Xiao Ran, bitterness is the essence of life. Everyone has too many helpless and bitter moments. Even at my position, I still can't control my own fate. Often, I have to let others dictate my life. If you can't even drink the bitterness of coffee, how will you endure the bitterness of life? Drink it." Duan Ran nodded. "I understand. Master, you're a little sentimental lately." She picked up the coffee cup and took a sip. It was indeed very bitter, but within the bitterness, there seemed to be some special taste. Liu Lihua stood with his hands behind his back. "Actually, I already know who the traitor is. I've already called them here, and will capture them soon. You stay here and drink your coffee. I'll be right back after using the restroom." Liu Lihua turned and left the private room. Duan Ran sighed lightly, picked up her coffee cup, and took another sip. At that moment, Duan Ran thought of Song Feng's warning. She became a little confused. According to Song Feng's crow's mouth predictions, she was supposed to encounter danger here. But now, there seemed to be no danger at all. After all, with team leader Liu, a powerful expert, and 2 armed plainclothes officers outside protecting her, what could go wrong? She thought for a moment and muttered, "Forget it, I'll be cautious. Since that crow's mouth said there is danger, I'll stay on alert." Duan Ran sat cross-legged and began to circulate her internal energy to check her condition. Suddenly, she felt a faint pain in her dantian, followed by a weak sensation spreading throughout her body. Not good. How did I get poisoned again? Duan Ran's eyes snapped open, her face turning pale. If it hadn't been for Song Feng's warning, she wouldn't have noticed the poison had already entered her dantian. Her heart raced. Looking around, her gaze finally landed on the coffee cup in front of her. Could it be, the coffee is poisoned? Is the traitor Liu Lihua? Duan Ran couldn't believe it. She quickly stood up and didn't dare to stay any longer. With poison in her dantian, she had no fighting ability. If she stayed, she would be at the mercy of others. Duan Ran looked around for an escape route, then pushed open the window at the back of the private room. She jumped out of the window. With a thud, she landed downstairs, and her buttocks hurt from the fall. She didn't have time to think and limped toward her motorcycle. Song Feng was already waiting on the motorcycle. When he saw Duan Ran return, he smiled. Now you believe me, huh? Get on, I'll take you back. Duan Ran climbed onto the back seat of the motorcycle, weakly wrapping her arms around Song Feng's waist. Hurry up, let us go back to the hotel. Song Feng pressed the gas and quickly sped off with Duan Ran. Meanwhile, outside the Blue Mountain Cafe, Liu Lihua was confident that the poison in Duan Ran's dantian had already taken effect. He opened the private room door, only to find the room empty. Liu Lihua glanced at the open window, his eyes narrowing. With his hands behind his back, he thought deeply, "Hey, I didn't expect my good disciple to be so sharp and cautious. But where did I slip up? How did she figure it out so quickly?" In the Four Seas Hotel, Duan Ran and Song Feng entered the room together. By now, the poison from the train had fully erupted in Duan Ran's body. It was the same chemical aphrodisiac powder she encountered on the train. Duan Ran gripped Song Feng's arm, her beautiful eyes staring intently at him. Song Feng was startled, instinctively crossing his arms and saying in panic, "Hey, why are you looking at me like that? What do you want? Help me again, just once more." Duan Ran said as she clung to Song Feng's neck. Song Feng quickly spoke up, "Wait, hold on a second. I can't wait. We'll talk after." Duan Ran had completely lost her rationality. Song Feng sighed. "Fine, extra charge." With a loud bang, the door of the room slammed shut with a gust of wind. Chapter 6 Benefactor. The next day, Duan Ran opened his eyes lazily and with a bit of aftertaste. The sun is already shining brightly. Duan Ran sat up suddenly, patted her head, and recalled the madness of last night. "Oh my god, this is so embarrassing." Duan Ran blushed, and quickly put on his clothes and tried to slip away. "Oh, you finally woke up. I was so tired from detoxifying you last night that my waist aches." Song Feng walked out of the bathroom, wiped his hair, stretched out his fingers and twisted them. Signaled Duan Ran to pay. Duan Ran was even more depressed. She glared at Song Feng, took out 1,000 yuan from her bag, and threw it on the bed. "We're even." Song Feng immediately shook his head. "That won't do. That time on the train, it was my first time after all, and I had no experience. I only detoxified you for 20 minutes, and the price was 1,000 yuan. But last night, I detoxified you for a full hour, and it cost 3,000. Duan Ran's face turned even redder, and he couldn't help but curse, "Shut up. You are just a humph. 3,000, take it. Goodbye." Duan Ran put the money down and hurried out the door. However, after taking only 2 steps, her waist ached and she quickly held onto the wall. Song Feng laughed triumphantly. He supported Duan Ran and said, "You should take a rest. Besides, you have to take me to find someone later." When Duan Ran saw Song Feng's smug smile and recalled the madness of last night, she felt shy and overwhelmed. She never thought that she, a princess of the Duan family, would actually sleep with a strange man twice in a row. If Grandpa and the others knew about this, they would probably turn the whole Jiang province upside down. After resting for another hour and taking a shower, Duan Ran stretched out his long legs and left the hotel with Song Feng. Arriving at the household registration department opposite, Duan Ran asked his colleague to help find Su Ran's whereabouts. Not long after, Su Ran's file was sent to Song Feng's mobile phone. Duan Ran looked at Song Feng and said, "Now we are even. Goodbye. No, this time we really will never see each other again." Song Feng curled his lips and muttered, "Oh, woman, you are so ruthless." Duan Ran glared at Song Feng, "Go away, get out of my sight. Every time I see you, something bad is wrong." Song Feng was pushed by Duan Ran and got into a taxi. Watching the taxi leave, Duan Ran was completely relieved. I finally got rid of this jinx. Damn it, how could he be so strong? Even a warrior like me can hardly handle it. Is he born under the sign of a donkey? Liu Lihua, my good master, how could you collude with the three pangolin brothers? Just wait, I will definitely bring you to justice. Duan yawned and walked towards her office, planning to take a nap first and then look for evidence of Liu Lihua's betrayal. In the taxi, Song Feng looked at Su Ran's file on his phone and a gentle smile appeared on his lips. That's weird. Isn't she studying medicine? Why didn't she work in a hospital? Instead, why did she work in the crystal department store? Song Feng touched his chin slightly, checked the information of crystal department store, and then he understood. The crystal department store is owned by the Su family and is considered a family business. I guess the reason why Su Ran went to work at the crystal department store is because he was valued by the elders of the family. Not long. Song Feng got out of the car and walked into the crystal department store. He was excited and recalled the little moments he had spent with Su Ran. At that time, Song Feng was chased by Zhao Hu, was shot in the stomach and fell into the water. It was Su Ran who braved the severe cold and rescued Song Feng from the river. Su Ran, with his thin body, carried Song Feng on his back and crawled into the abandoned clinic. Outside, there were the fierce and arrogant figures of Zhao Hu and the killers, and the hospital was also full of Zhao Hu's spies. Su Ran hid in the clinic and used rusty medical instruments to remove the bullet from Song Feng's body and suture the wound. Later, she stole nutrition packs from the hospital where she was interning and fed them to Song Feng mouthful by mouthful, eventually saving Song Feng from danger. It was she who took the risk again and sent Song Feng on the coal-carrying train to the northwest. She is pretty, pure, kind-hearted and lovely. Ha! Song Feng's eyes flashed with tears. I wonder if this stunningly beautiful lifesaver is married. She is so beautiful, there must be a lot of people pursuing her. Maybe she has a child now. He wiped his eyes, walked towards the counter of the shopping mall, and asked, "Hello, which department does Ms. Su Ran work in?" Seeing how handsome Song Feng was, the lady at the counter did not refuse. She smiled sweetly and said, "Sir, please wait a moment. I will help you check, Su Ran. We only have one employee named Su Ran in Crystal Department Store." Song Feng's eyes lit up and he quickly said, "Where is her office?" "I'm her friend and I have something important to discuss with her." The lady at the counter laughed and shook her head. "Where does Su Ran have an office?" "She works in the cleaning department and is responsible for cleaning all the elevators and stairs. You can find her by the elevator." "What?" Song Feng frowned. He turned around and walked towards the elevator of the shopping mall. On the second floor of the elevator, a woman in blue cleaning clothes was squatting beside the elevator, wiping the chewing gum off the floor with a towel. Next to her was a long-haired woman wearing a white professional one-step skirt. The woman looked smug and sneered, "Su Ran, you failed to clean up this piece of chewing gum in time. You will be deducted 500 yuan from your salary this month. Cousin, could you please stop fingering me?" Either woman on the ground raised her head. Su Jingmai sneered, "Shut up. I told you not to call me cousin in the shopping mall. This is a workplace, and since you made a mistake at work, you must deduct your salary. Ugly." Su Jingmai laughed triumphantly and turned away. Song Feng looked at the scene in disbelief. He immediately ran over and pulled up the cleaning woman on the ground. The woman turned her head and glanced at Song Feng. She was slightly stunned, then lowered her head in a hurry. Song Feng looked at the woman in front of him and was horrified at first, because the woman in front of him had a huge scar on the left half of her face. Several scars were hideously gathered together, like a demon with scales. But soon, Song Feng realized that the woman in front of him was really Su Ran, his savior, the lovely, kind and beautiful angel in his dreams. From her right face, you can still see her former beauty. "Su Ran, it's really you. Great, I finally found you." Song Feng subconsciously hugged the woman in front of him. Su Ran's body froze, then she smiled and said, "Song Feng, you're back. You better be careful, maybe those killers are still there." Song Feng nodded vigorously, his eyes couldn't help but turn red. He pulled Su Ran's arm and looked at the hideous and terrifying scar on her cheek. Song Feng asked distressfully, "Su Ran, what happened to your face? Also, you are obviously a top medical student, why are you doing this job now?" Chapter 7 Go Get the Certificate. When Su Ran heard Song Feng's question, a trace of pain flashed in her eyes. She quickly lowered her head and gently wiped the corners of her eyes. Su Ran whispered, "It's all over, Song Feng, let's talk after I get off work. If Su Jingmai sees this, she'll deduct my salary again." Song Feng pulled Suran up. He never expected that the angel in his dream had fallen into the quagmire and was living such a miserable life. Let's go. You don't have to work anymore. I'll take care of everything. From now on, I'll take care of you. Song Feng pulled Suran up, his voice firm and powerful. At this time, 3 big men came down the escalator. The big man in the lead, with a face full of flesh and a tattoo of the word, came in front of Song Feng and Suran and laughed. Su Jingmai is right, you ugly bastard are really here. Let's see where you can escape this time. When Suran saw the big man, he quickly took a step back. You, what on earth are you going to do? Hu Ren smiled smugly. What for? Of course I want you to pay for the medical expenses. It was because you mopped the floor too clean that I fell. This account must be settled. Come with us. Suran quickly shook her head and shouted, Security, security, come quickly. Hu Ren laughed arrogantly. Stop shouting. No one can save you today. We have already informed Su Jingmai. She said this is our dispute and the security will not interfere. Har har har. TSK, just look at this figure, it's fucking perfect, worthy of being the former campus belle of Qingzhou University. Third brother, I think if we cover her face, she can still be the top star in our nightclub. It's just that this face is so scary, it makes me want to vomit. The 3 big men laughed wildly. Hu Ren took a step forward and grabbed Suran's hair. Song Feng was standing aside. Seeing this scene, he was furious and at the same time extremely distressed. My savior, that kind and lovely girl, that top student in the medical school, is now being bullied by this group of rubbish hooligans. Where is justice? Song Feng suddenly grabbed Hu Ren's wrist and bent it. With a click sound, Hu Ren's wrist broke instantly. Who are you? How dare you interfere in my affairs? I'm tired of living. Hu Ren screamed in pain. The other 2 big men immediately rushed towards Song Feng. There was a flash of coldness in Song Feng's eyes, and he kicked them one by one. Bang, bang, bang. Hu Ren and 2 others rolled down the escalator to the 1st floor lobby. Get out. If you dare to provoke Suran again, I will kill you. Song Feng's voice was cold. Hu Ren and the other 2 were so frightened that they trembled and ran away without looking back. Song Feng looked at Suran and said, Come on, I'll take you home and give you treatment. Without giving Suran a chance to resist, Song Feng pulled Suran away from the crystal department store. Sitting in a taxi, Song Feng asked, Suran, what happened in these years? Why are you living such a miserable life? Suran lowered his head and sighed. 5 years ago, I returned to school late at night and met a masked man. He threw sulfuric acid on my face without saying anything, and I was disfigured. As for the murderer, he has never been caught. When I graduated, because my graduation thesis had too many repetitions with other students' papers, the school determined that I had plagiarized and withheld my graduation certificate and degree certificate. Without a certificate of education, I can't take the medical license exam, let alone work in a hospital. I can only stay in our Su family's commercial building. After hearing this, Song Feng felt extremely distressed. He took a deep breath, looked at Suran and said, Suran, don't worry, I will heal your face, and you won't be bullied or laughed at anymore. I will always be by your side. Suran shook her head and smiled bitterly. She had already given up hope about her appearance. Not long after, the 2 returned to Unju community. The community is dirty and messy, and it is a very old resettlement housing community. Reached the 3rd floor and entered Suran's home. Su Nanyun and Cao Hongfeng and his wife were arguing at home. Cao Hongfeng kept complaining, Look at you, a grown man, what's the point of you? You haven't found a job in a few months, and your family's savings are all gone. Su Nanyun hung his head and did not dare to retort. Suran walked in with Song Feng. She said, Mom and Dad, stop arguing. It's hard to find a job after you turn 35. Mom, don't blame Dad all the time. It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, Grandpa wouldn't have kicked you 2 out of the house, and Dad wouldn't have been fired from the management of Crystal Commercial Building. Cao Hongfeng looked at Suran strangely. Xiao Ran, why did you get off work so early today? Hey? Who is he? Song Feng immediately smiled and said, Hello, Auntie. I am Suran's friend, Song Feng. Speaking of which, Suran is my savior. 5 years ago, if Suran hadn't saved me and sent me on the train, I would be left with only bones now. You are Song Feng. Cao Hongfeng suddenly raised her voice. Su Nanyan also stood up and said, it was you 5 years ago. Song Feng looked at the two people's reactions and felt very strange. Cao Hongfeng came over, grabbed Song Feng's arm, and asked, Song Feng, are you married? Song Feng shook his head, no. Auntie, what's wrong with you? Upon hearing this, Cao Hongfeng immediately turned to Su Nanyan and said, Old Su, what are you still standing there for? Quick, get the rope and tie him up. Okay. Su Nanyan immediately went to the kitchen to get the hemp rope. Song Feng stood there, looking confused. Su Ran immediately stood in front of Song Feng and said, Mom, what are you doing? Why did you tie up Song Feng for no reason? For no reason? Do you call this for no reason? My beautiful and excellent daughter was ruined because of him. He must be held responsible. Cao Hongfeng said loudly and excitedly. Su Nanyan ran out holding a bunch of mash and nodded, saying, yes, he must be responsible. He can't leave today. Song Feng was very surprised. He asked Cao Hongfeng, Auntie, Su Ran saved me. I am very grateful. But I don't quite understand what you mean. Cao Hongfeng said angrily, you don't understand. Humph, Su Ran came back so late because she sent you to the train, and that's why someone splashed sulfuric acid on him on the road. That's why our family is in such a state. Do you think you have no responsibility? Song Feng stood there in a daze, his heart aching even more. It turned out that Su Ran's appearance was destroyed on the day she sent herself away. Indeed, in order to successfully climb onto the coal train, the two men lay on the side of the railway at around 2 in the morning. When Su Ran returned, it was already late at night and it was indeed very dangerous. Song Feng's heart warmed up, feeling ashamed and grateful. He said loudly, Uncle and Aunt, don't worry, I will definitely cure Su Ran and repay her and you. Cao Hongfeng waved her hand and sneered, don't say those useless things. Today, you must marry Su Ran and get the marriage certificate. Song Feng and Su Ran were both stunned and stood there in a daze. Chapter 8 Snow White Woman. Su Nanyan picked up the rope and tied Song Feng's hands behind his back. He snorted and said, because of you, my daughter has suffered all her life, so you must be responsible for the rest of her life. Song Feng stood there. He never imagined that Cao Hongfeng and Su Nanyan were looking for a rope to tie him up and get a marriage certificate. Su Ran also understood. Her face turned red and she quickly said, Mom and Dad, please stop. Song Feng and I are just friends. How can we get married? Besides, I'm already like this and don't want to get married anymore. I just want to live alone. That won't do. It's his responsibility, he must be responsible. Go get the certificate now. Xiaoran, don't worry, your parents will definitely marry you off. Cao Hongfeng looked at her daughter with heartache. Song Feng said quickly, Uncle and Aunt, please let me go first. I am willing to marry Su Ran. I am very willing and I can't wait to do this. When Cao Hongfeng and Su Nanyan heard this, they looked at Song Feng in confusion. Song Feng said excitedly, Su Ran is my savior and the fairy I have always thought of in my heart. When I came here, I was still worried. If Su Ran had a boyfriend, I would definitely be very sad. Now, you let me marry her, I am very happy and grateful. Cao Hongfeng's face was full of disbelief. She stretched out her hand and waved it in front of Song Feng's eyes, muttering, You are not blind, are you? My daughter is in this state now, and you are still willing to marry her. Song Feng nodded vigorously, Of course I do. I really do. Besides, her face was only disfigured by sulfuric acid, I can treat it. Cao Hongfeng pouted and said, What kind of treatment is that? We sold our house and still couldn't cure her face. But it would be great if you agree. Go get the marriage certificate now. It's a deal. Song Feng nodded. Su Ran stood aside and wanted to speak, but Cao Hongfeng and Su Nanyan did not give her any chance to resist. The four people took their ID cards, took a taxi, and went straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau. 2 hours later, they returned from the Civil Affairs Bureau and entered the house. Cao Hongfeng breathed a sigh of relief. She smiled and said, Song Feng, you will be Xiaoran's husband from now on. You can live in our house first. Auntie knows that you just came back from escaping. It doesn't matter. As long as you work hard, your life will get better and better. Su Nanyan nodded and said, Yes, your Song family is gone, this is your home. You work hard and let me have a grandson next year. Also, don't dislike Xiaoran after you get married, otherwise I will break your legs. As the couple talked, they pushed Song Feng and Su Ran into Su Ran's bedroom. Cao Hongfeng wiped away her tears excitedly. Lao Su, I never thought that our daughter could get married and live a normal life as a woman. And although her husband is a little poor and has no job, he is healthy and handsome, which is great. Su Nanyan put his arm around Cao Hongfeng's shoulders and said, the Bodhisattva has appeared. The Bodhisattva has appeared. The two of them hugged each other and cried bitterly. In Su Ran's bedroom, Song Feng looked down at the red marriage certificate, then looked at the thin Su Ran opposite him, and couldn't help grinning. Su Ran blushed, sighed helplessly and said, Song Feng, I'm really sorry, I didn't expect my parents to be so unreasonable. But you don't have to worry, we will sneak out tomorrow and get the marriage certificate. Don't worry, I won't implicate you. Song Feng held Su Ran's slender hands distressedly. He shook his head and said, no, Su Ran, you are my woman. In the past 5 years, I often saw you in my dreams. You gave me a second life. Your kindness and care make me miss you all the time. With such a beautiful wife, what else can a husband ask for? Su Ran's face turned red all the way to her neck. She lowered her head and said, but I have become an ugly monster. I am no longer the person in your dream. I will only give you nightmares now. Song Feng shook his head and laughed, all dreams with you in them are beautiful dreams. Besides, I can treat your face. Wait at home, I'm going out to buy some medicine and prepare the ointment. Su Ran shook his head, naturally not believing it. She is a doctor herself and has read all the papers in the world. She knows very well that her face cannot be restored. Even if she undergoes expensive plastic surgery, it can only guarantee that it will not be scary. Song Feng didn't explain much, turned around and quickly left Su Ran's house. Su Nanyan and Cao Hongfeng were both extremely worried. Cao Hongfeng muttered, daughter, Song Feng must have regretted it. What if he doesn't come back? Su Nanyan warned seriously, Xiao Ran, I tell you, you have to have a child with Song Feng as soon as possible. Only by having a child can you tie him down completely. Su Ran was speechless for a while. Song Feng took a taxi and headed straight to Yaowang Street in Qingzhou City. Normal medical methods are indeed unable to restore Su Ran's appearance. However, Song Feng obtained the ancestral witch dragon suppressing tower, and obtained the ancestral witch's inheritance and the dragon blood body tempering. The ancient witch tradition contains extremely exquisite ancient medical ointment recipes. Among them is a Huayu Baishua ointment that can promote blood circulation and remove blood stasis and promote new growth, thereby eliminating the scars on Su Ran's face and allowing new skin to grow again. The materials of this plaster are quite common, except for the purple blood bergamot, which is somewhat rare. However, Yaowang Street, as the largest medicinal materials distribution center in Qingzhou City, can definitely be found. After entering Yaowang Street, Song Feng asked 2 pharmacies in succession, but did not find the purple blood booter's hand. Song Feng sighed in disappointment. At this time, the clerk said to Song Feng, handsome boy, the purple blood booter's hand you bought is indeed very rare. I have never heard of it. But you can go to the Guiyitang on the left to have a look. Guiyitang has the most complete medicinal materials, and the genius Dr. Lin Zhuwei in Guiyitang likes to use strange medicinal materials to treat diseases the most. When Song Feng heard this, he immediately thanked him and walked towards Guiyi Hall, which was not far away. Guiyi Hall is very big. In addition to the dazzling array of Chinese herbal medicines, there is also a consultation table on the left side of the pharmacy. In front of the table is a sign, Lin Zhuwei is on duty, consultation fee is 100,000 yuan. Song Feng walked straight to the counter and asked, hello, do you have purple blood booter's hand? The Chinese medicine practitioner behind the counter nodded and said, yes, but the price is much higher than ordinary booter's hand, 3,000 yuan for 100 grams. 3,000. Song Feng felt a little painful. In the morning, I was as tired as an ox. After a whole hour of hard work, I only earned 3,000 yuan. Now I can only buy 100 grams of purple blood booter's hand. However, this medicinal ingredient is the main ingredient in the Huayu Baishua cream, so you have to buy it no matter how expensive it is. It seems that I have to contact Duan Ran again and ask her if she still has any needs so that I can make more money as soon as possible. Song Feng took out all the money he had and finally bought the blood removing and snow Bayu ointment. He was about to leave when the door of Gi Hall was pushed open and a tall woman with long legs and snow-white skin walked in quickly, pushing a wheelchair. There was an old man sitting in a wheelchair, holding his chest with his hands, his face purple and red, and it looked like he wouldn't live long. Song Feng looked up and saw the woman pushing the wheelchair. Surprise flashed in his eyes. At first glance, this woman was too white, whiter than wall putty. At another glance, Song Feng's heart was slightly shocked. Chapter 9 Miracle Healer. Song Feng looked at the fair-skinned and beautiful woman opposite him and couldn't help but frowning. The woman was wearing a long black handmade satin dress, which was exquisitely crafted and made her skin look even whiter and smoother. She wore such an expensive dress only as daily wear. It was obvious that the woman was very rich. However, this beautiful, fair, wealthy woman actually had a hint of evil aura about her. Wu Qian was in a hurry. She pushed her wheelchair to Lin Jiuwei's examination table and said quickly, "Dr. Lin, come and see what happened to my grandpa." Lin Jiuwei came out hunched over, glanced at the old man in the wheelchair, sighed helplessly and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Wu, Mr. Wu is already terminally ill and there is no way to treat him anymore." Wu Qian's tears fell. "Dr. Lin, even you can't extend grandpa's life." Lin Jiuwei nodded, put his hands behind his back and said, "Miss Wu, I have helped Mr. Wu 3 times and extended his life 3 times. But human power cannot defeat nature, and I really have no other choice. Miss Wu, Mr. Wu, please be more open-minded. Everyone will die one day, and the cycle of life and death will return to dust. Life and death are determined by fate and cannot be forced." When Wu Qian heard this, she burst into tears. Wu Dongliang, who was in a wheelchair, coughed twice and said with a forced smile, "Silly child, why are you crying? Ahem, death is already a relief for me. My only regret is that you are not married yet. Grandpa couldn't put on a wedding dress for you, couldn't hold your hand, and hand you over to the groom, ahem." Wu Qian was crying even harder. Song Feng came over, glanced at Wu Dongliang, and said, "Don't cry yet. Your grandfather just has a lung bruise, which caused the stasis of his vital energy and heart failure. The treatment is very simple." "What?" Wu Qian turned her head suddenly, looking at Song Feng with her big watery eyes. She excitedly grabbed Song Feng's arm and said, "Really? You said my grandfather can still be saved?" Song Feng nodded and said, "Of course there is hope. Your situation is more serious and it's very difficult to deal with." Wu Qian looked at Song Feng in confusion. At this time, Lin Jiuwei, who was standing next to him, sneered, "Young man, aren't you afraid that the wind will blow away your tongue? Director Wu's blood and qi are exhausted, and he is seriously ill. He won't live for more than 3 days." Song Feng ignored Lin Jiuwei. He picked up a box of acupuncture needles on the table and said, "Then I will treat your grandfather now, and the consultation fee will be the same as that of this old doctor." As Song Feng spoke, the needle in his hand quickly pierced into Wu Dongliang's 9 major acupoints, including the Tanzhong point on his chest, the Qintu point on his neck, and the Shinshu point on his heart. Lin Jiuwei suddenly jumped up and looked at Song Feng in disbelief. "Nonsense! You are really too ridiculous. These vital points will cause death if pierced with acupuncture. You are trying to kill Director Wu." Song Feng smiled and straightened up. At this moment, Wu Dongliang, who was in the wheelchair, took a sudden and rapid breath, and a beast-like cry came out of his throat. Then, his eyes suddenly rolled back, his head tilted, and he fell in the wheelchair, completely dead. "Grandpa, Grandpa!" Wu Qian knelt beside the wheelchair and cried in despair when she saw that her grandfather was really dead. Lin Jiuwei pointed at Song Feng angrily, "You are a quack doctor who takes human life lightly. Jewelry tycoon Wu Dongliang was killed by your treatment. The shop assistants and customers around were talking about it. Who is this kid? He's so reckless. Lin Jiuwei is a famous doctor in Qingzhou city. If he said he couldn't cure it, then he really couldn't cure it. Now he's fine. He could have lived for 3 days, but now he's dead. Traditional Chinese medicine is the most difficult to learn. This kid has probably only studied for 3.5 days and thinks he is a miracle doctor. He thinks the Wu family is rich. If he can cure old man Wu, he won't have to worry about food and drink for the rest of his life." Song Feng looked at Wu Qian, who was crying, and laughed. He patted Wu Qian on the shoulder and said, "Don't cry. Pay the consultation fee first. You still have the nerve to talk about the medical fee." Wu Qian's eyes were red from crying. She cursed angrily, if it weren't for you, Grandpa wouldn't have died immediately. Forget it, it's all my fault. I was too trusting. Get out of here right now, or I'll call the police to arrest you. Song Feng curled his lips, smiled softly, and said, You are just a person with long hair and short knowledge. I am treating your grandfather. Okay, it's almost done. I will wake him up. As Song Feng spoke, he walked in front of Wu Dongliang and slapped Wu Dongliang's chest with his palm. Boom! Wu Dongliang's body shook violently, and at the same time, the 9 needles on his body flew out and fell to the ground. Cough! Cough, cough, cough. Wu Dongliang woke up as expected and then started coughing violently. After coughing for half a minute, Wu Dongliang suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of smelly pus and blood. Song Feng nodded and said, Okay. How do you feel now? Wu Dongliang raised his head in surprise and looked at Song Feng in disbelief. He immediately stood up, bowed respectfully, and said, Thank you, miraculous doctor. I feel so relaxed, as if I am 20 years younger. Lin Jiawei on the side walked forward in disbelief. He felt Wu Dongliang's pulse and was even more shocked. Lin Jiawei immediately grabbed Song Feng's arm and said excitedly, Little doctor, what's going on? Did you really cure Wu Dongliang's illness? This is impossible, he is obviously exhausted and dying. Song Feng explained casually, in fact, old man Wu's illness is not due to exhaustion of qi and blood. Instead, his lungs were severely injured 30 years ago, causing blood stasis and blockage, which prevented the vital energy in his lungs from circulating throughout his body. That's why you thought he was exhausted. I just used acupuncture to open up his lung meridians, allowing him to cough up the blood, and he will recover naturally. Lin Jiawei was shocked, but still said in disbelief, But just now, you clearly cured him to death, how come Director Wu is suddenly alive and well again? Wu Qian also looked at Song Feng in confusion. Song Feng smiled and said, That's a desperate move. The bruises in old man Wu's body are too severe. It's impossible to get rid of the blood by normal means. So, I put him in a near-death state. At this time, all the organs, blood, and energy in old man Wu's body will be mobilized to the maximum extent to fight against death. Combined with the internal force in my palm, the two will eventually make him cough up pus and blood. Lin Jiawei, who was standing at the side, suddenly had an idea when he heard these words. He murmured, I understand, I understand. The potential of human life is infinite. In the moment before death, we can create miracles by using the power of life itself. Having said this, Lin Jiawei suddenly knelt down on one knee towards Song Feng. Thank you for your guidance, master. I understand. Please accept Lin Jiawei's greetings. The people around were shocked to see Lin Jiawei actually kneeling down to Song Feng. Song Feng took a half step to the side, waved his hand and said, I don't recognize you as my disciple. Beauty, we agreed on a consultation fee of 100,000 yuan, pay me now. Song Feng smiled and looked at Wu Qian, whose skin was as white as snow. Chapter 10, Applying Medicine. Wu Qian quickly took out her cell phone and added Song Feng's contact information. Then, she tapped her fingers and transferred 1 million directly to Song Feng. Song Feng was in a good mood when he saw the 1 million in his account. He smiled and said, Beautiful lady, you are so generous. Because you are beautiful and generous, I want to remind you. Your condition is more serious than your grandfather's. During this period, you must not touch cold things, especially cold drinks and ice cream. Don't eat them. Otherwise, even gods can't save you. After Song Feng finished speaking, he waved his hand and turned to leave. In the Gi Hall, Wu Qian looked at Song Feng's back in confusion. She turned her head and looked at Lin Jiawei, and asked, Dr. Lin, what does he mean? Is there really something wrong with my body? Lin Jiawei felt Wu Qian's pulse, shook his head and said, Your pulse is very healthy. Apart from your yang deficiency and cold constitution, there is nothing wrong with you. I don't know why Master reminded you like this. But, Miss Wu, you'd better do as he asks. After all, his medical skills are so great. Oh, what a pity, it's a pity that he doesn't accept me as his disciple. But I will never give up. I must take him as my master. Song Feng made 1 million and was in a good mood. He took a taxi and went to the bank first to withdraw 500,000 yuan. After returning to Su Ran's home, Song Feng threw the bag containing 500,000 yuan onto the table with a click. Sure enough, when a man has money, he becomes more confident. Song Feng said to Su Nanyun and Cao Hongfeng, Mom and Dad, this 500,000 is the betrothal gift. Thank you for marrying Su Ran to me. I will definitely not treat you unfairly in the future. The couple were overjoyed when they saw the 500,000. Cao Hongfeng quickly said, Oh, my good son-in-law, where did you get so much money? Don't you have a job? Song Feng said, I served in the army in the northwest, and I have a pension. Plus, I learned some medical skills, so I can make money by treating patients and saving lives. Song Feng didn't explain in detail. He took the herbs, went into the kitchen, and started to make the blood-removing and snow-whitening ointment. In the evening, the plaster was finally ready. Song Feng got ready and walked into Su Ran's bedroom. Su Ran, go take a shower and get ready. Song Feng said. When Su Ran heard this, she exclaimed, Ar. She raised her head in panic and looked at Song Feng, take a shower. Song Feng, are you serious about this? Song Feng nodded, and said with a grin, of course it's real. How can something like this be fake? Su Ran's face turned even redder, and she quickly shook her head and said, no, really not. I'm so ugly, it's too unfair for you. Besides, we just met, and we're going to do that kind of thing. I can't accept it. What kind of thing? Song Feng said with a smile, I'm talking about treating the scar on your face. What are you talking about? Su Ran was stunned for a moment, then she quickly covered her head with the blanket and said angrily, Song Feng. You did it on purpose. You bullied me on purpose. Song Feng laughed out loud. He walked to the bed, took Su Ran's hand and said, Su Ran, I'll tell you again, you are the most beautiful in my eyes. I will never dislike you for being ugly. Also, although we are married, I will not force you to do that with me unless you are willing. Now, go take a shower. I will perform the surgery and apply the medicine. You cannot wash your face after applying the medicine. You have to wait for 48 hours before you can remove the gauze and plaster. Su Ran was slightly touched. She nodded and said, although I know you are doing useless work, I am willing to cooperate with you. Soon, Su Ran took a shower and walked out. Song Feng took out the scalpel and acupuncture box he had just bought and walked in front of Su Ran. Holding the needle, Song Feng quickly inserted the needle into Su Ran's face. These acupoints can paralyze the nerves, making Su Ran feel no pain. After acupuncture, Song Feng used a scalpel to quickly cut across Su Ran's face, removing the hardened scars and tissues on her face. Song Feng's technique was quick and the operation was completed within a few minutes. Picking up the blood-removing white snow ointment, Song Feng applied it evenly on Su Ran's face, and then wrapped it up in circles with gauze dipped in the ointment. Done, the operation was successful. You will be able to regain your beauty the day after tomorrow. Song Feng said with a smile. Su Ran shook her head. She naturally didn't believe it. Su Ran smiled and said, Song Feng, I didn't expect that you are more skilled in using a scalpel than I am. You have learned a lot of skills in the Northwest over the past 5 years. Song Feng said proudly, of course, these are just the basics. I know a lot more. I will show you one by one later. Now, it's time for us to go to bed. Song Feng deliberately emphasized the pronunciation of the word. R. Su Ran became nervous again. However, Song Feng slept on the floor very properly. Not long after, he began to snore and fell asleep. Su Ran listened to Song Feng's light and regular snoring, and her heart suddenly felt calm and peaceful. She only felt waves of peace and joy, and a warm sense of happiness filled her heart. Not long after, Su Ran also fell asleep peacefully. She slept soundly and sweetly. It was the first time in 5 years that she slept so peacefully and contentedly. The next day, it was around 5 in the morning. Song Feng woke up and stretched his waist. He turned to look at Su Ran and found that Su Ran was wearing a nightgown with her 2 white legs exposed and crossed left and right. The nightgown was wrinkled to her waist. Song Feng swallowed hard. He had to admit, even though this girl's face was disfigured, she was still very charming. Song Feng didn't dare to look any further and walked out of the room. When he arrived at the community, he jumped lightly with his legs and jumped onto the roof of the building. The morning sun rises and purple air comes from the east. Song Feng faced the purple energy of the morning sun and began to circulate his internal energy, breathing in and out. Inside his dantian, an ancient, dilapidated little tower was spinning rapidly. This is Song Feng's biggest secret. He fled to the northwest and discovered the dragon tower of the ancestral witch at the foot of the Kunlun Mountains, and obtained the ancestral witch's heritage. At the same time, the dragon blood in the dragon suppressing tower also tempered Song Feng's body and made him reborn, with his muscles and bones becoming extremely strong. In the past 5 years, Song Feng has been practicing day and night, and his strength has far surpassed that of the innate master. Around 7 o'clock. In the room, Suran suddenly woke up. She looked at the time and exclaimed, "Oh, how come I slept until now? It's over, I'm going to be late." Suran quickly put on her clothes and prepared to go to work. Song Feng walked in with breakfast in his hand. He looked at Suran and said with a smile, "Suran, don't go to work. You are a top student, and it's too depressing for you to work as a cleaner in a shopping mall. Besides, that female supervisor is full of malice towards you. Resign now, and I will support you in the future." Suran laughed, shook her head, and said helplessly, "Song Feng, no company will want me now that I am like this. Although the job at Crystal Commercial Building is not good, it is our Su family's property after all, and my father also gets a share of the dividends from Crystal Commercial Building. If I have the opportunity in the future, I still want to make a difference in the business, so that these relatives can look up to my parents and let them return to the clan in glory. If I leave them all, I will really be a useless person who can't find a job. Besides, my uncle and his men can easily cheat and fabricate data and won't give our family any dividends." Song Feng felt helpless when he heard this. He sighed and said, "Okay, I won't stop you from going to work, but I have to follow you. What if those 3 hooligans come to trouble you again?" Chapter 11 Opportunities for Promotion. Suran originally wanted to refuse. After all, which cleaner would bring a handsome guy to work? However, when she heard Song Feng's last words, her face turned pale and she nodded quickly. Suran was indeed afraid that Hu Ren and his 3 thugs would come and cause trouble again. The 2 of them went to Crystal department store together. Suran had gauze wrapped around her face and started to get busy after entering the shopping mall. At noon, a proud woman in a black professional skirt walked up to Suran. She raised the folder in her hand and slammed it on Suran's shoulder. Suran was startled and stepped back. Seeing that it was Su Jingmai, he frowned and said, "Manager Su, what are you doing?" Su Jingmai saw the gauze wrapped around Suran's face and sneered, "What for?" "Of course I'm checking your work. Look at you, ugly bastard, covering your face while working. You think you're Xia Long NU. Deduct 500 yuan from your salary." Suran was so angry that his face turned pale. Su Jingmai crossed her arms and continued to curse, "Also, did you have a conflict with the customers in the mall yesterday? I heard that you injured 3 guests. You must give an explanation for this matter, otherwise, get out of the mall. Don't work in our Su family anymore." Suran suppressed his anger and said, "Manager Su, those 3 people were clearly looking for trouble on purpose. He fell down, but he insisted that I pay for the medical expenses, and he also said that it was because I mopped the elevator too clean. And they were the first to take action and wanted to take me away by force. People like this are not honored guests, they are clearly hooligans. Bullshit. I said you are distinguished guest, so you are distinguished guest. How dare you talk back? From now on, you are fired, and you can only come to work after you have begged for forgiveness from Mr. Hu and the other 2. Su Jingmai announced the result proudly. Suran was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She didn't expect that her cousin would be so vicious and insisted on kicking her out of the shopping mall. The surrounding shopping mall employees gathered around and talked in low voices. Suran will definitely be fired. I really don't understand why Manager Su always makes things difficult for Suran. Oh, you don't understand this. I heard that 6 or 7 years ago, Manager Su's boyfriend fell in love with Suran the first time he saw her. He loved her to death and dumped her the next moment. Suran is so pitiful. I heard she was a beauty before, a famous school beauty. I didn't expect that she has become a joke now." Seeing this scene, Song Feng walked straight over. He patted Su Jingmai on the shoulder and said, "Manager Su, you are so vicious, aren't you afraid of getting uremia?" Su Jingmai turned around, looked at Song Feng angrily, and shouted, "Who are you? How dare you curse me? Security, security, come here, kick him out." Song Feng chuckled and stepped back to Suran's side. He turned to Suran and said, "Wife, you should stay away from this kind of person. She has a loose behavior and has already contracted a lot of dirty diseases. She is incontinent. You must not come into contact with her. It will be contagious. When Su Ran heard Song Feng say this, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Su Jingmai was even more furious when she heard what Song Feng said. She pointed at Song Feng and said, "Are you the husband of this ugly bastard? Well, you two are a pair of bastards. What's wrong with me?" Su Jingmai felt her pants were cold. She lowered her head and found that her pants were wet. My pants, what is this?" Su Jingmai stepped back, leaving a puddle of water under her feet. Song Feng covered his nose and said with disgust, "Go away, you have a disease and you don't go to the hospital for treatment, but you run to the shopping mall to spread it everywhere. Seeing that you can't even take care of your own urination and defecation, it must be in the late stage." When the employees around heard what Song Feng said, they all stepped back. "Oh my god, Su Jingmai has syphilis, no wonder she always has pimples on her face. It's over, it's over. I talked to her this morning. I don't know if I'll be infected. It's too scary, let's get out of the way." Everyone looked at Su Jingmai as if she were the god of plague. The security guard who came running over also covered his nose and didn't get close to Su Jingmai. Su Jingmai was so angry that her face turned red. She suddenly realized that it must be Song Feng's doing. Su Jingmai pointed at Song Feng and Su Ran, "I'm not sick, it's you who did this. Just wait." She quickly turned around and ran towards her office. After changing her clothes, Su Jingmai became more and more scared. She quietly took a taxi and went to the hospital for a checkup to see if she really had a liver disease. After checking at the hospital, everything was normal. Su Jingmai breathed a sigh of relief. The more she recalled, the more aggrieved she felt. She drove back to her home. "Dad. That ugly bitch Su Ran bullied me again today. I don't know where she found a lover who tricked me into peeing in public. I'm so embarrassed." Su Jingmai cried aggrievedly as soon as she entered the door. Su Dengyuan, who was sitting on the sofa, frowned. "A lover? With Su Ran's ugly face, can she find a lover?" Su Jingmai said angrily, "I don't know if Song Feng is blind. However, that guy is not a good guy. He patted me and made me pee. I will never dare to cause trouble to Su Ran again. In this way, it will be even more difficult to drive that ugly guy out of the shopping mall." Su Dengyuan laughed and said, "Don't worry, there will be an opportunity tomorrow. As long as you can grasp it, you can be promoted to the director of the business department of the commercial building. At that time, you will be high up, and it will be easy to fire Su Ran." When Su Jingmai heard this, she excitedly sat over and said, "Dad, is it true?" Su Dengyuan nodded, smoking a cigarette and explaining, "Wu Dongliang, the jewelry tycoon of Qingzhou city, had already prepared his funeral arrangements and was just waiting to be buried. Unexpectedly, he met a miracle doctor and is now alive and well again. He will hold a celebration party tomorrow night to celebrate his rebirth, and he will also open a new flagship store of Qingzhou jewelry. Your grandfather said that no matter who it is, as long as he has the ability to get Wu Dongliang to open a flagship store in Crystal Department Store, he will be the director of the department store's business department." Su Jingmai sighed when she heard this. "Dad, Qingzhou Jewelry is the leading jewelry company in Qingzhou city. How could their flagship store be opened in our Crystal Department Store? I simply don't have the ability to do this." Su Dengyuan chuckled, "Don't worry, I have bribed a senior executive of Qingzhou Group. You should prepare well, and there will be great hope when the time comes." Su Jingmai jumped up excitedly and clenched her fists. "Su Ran, just wait. I will soon become the director of the business department. By then, you will be an ant under my feet. I will crush you, you ugly bastard, to death." Song Feng and Su Ran were resting in the grocery room and eating boxed lunches. Su Ran smoothed her hair, smiled at Song Feng, and said, "Song Feng, I'm sorry for asking you to stay here and eat lunch with me." Song Feng shook his head and frowned, saying, "That woman is so abominable. Let me tell you that you should just quit your job." Su Ran sighed slightly, "Song Feng, if I resign, our family will be completely kicked out of the Su family commercial building. At that time, our family's dividends will definitely go to my uncle Su Dingyuan's family." Song Feng understood, and just as he was about to speak, his cell phone rang. I picked it up and took a look, and found that the person calling was the woman as white as snow, Wu Qian. Chapter 12. There is still hope. Song Feng picked up the phone and answered it. Wu Qian's crisp and graceful laughter came from the other side. "Hello, Dr. Song, I'm Wu Qian. I'm calling you to invite you to the Wu family dinner tomorrow night. Song Feng said calmly, no, I still have to accompany my wife. Wu Qian was stunned, and subconsciously said, So you are married, I saw you didn't wear a ring on your hand, and I thought. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Song, you can bring your wife with you tomorrow night. How about this, I will give the invitation to you and your wife when I return from the ski resort. When Song Feng heard about the ski resort, he immediately asked, skiing? Are you going skiing now? Wu Qian smiled happily and said, yes, this ski resort was invested by our Wu family. My grandfather is in good health now, so he brought our whole family here to exercise and celebrate. Song Feng's voice became serious, and he immediately said, go to the warmest place right now, and stop skiing. Also, send me an address, I'll go there now, hurry up. Wu Qian was a little confused. She said, okay, Mr. Song. Wu Qian hung up the phone and sent the address, looking confused. Standing next to Wu Qian was jewelry tycoon Wu Dongliang. Wu Dongliang was wearing a ski suit and looked energetic. No one could tell that he was a sick and dying patient just a day ago. Wu Dongliang looked at Wu Qian expectantly and asked, granddaughter, what did Dr. Song say? Will he come to the banquet tomorrow night? Wu Qian shook her head and muttered, Mr. Song said he wanted to accompany his wife, and told me to stay somewhere warm, and he would be here soon, as if I was going to die. Wu Dongliang was very surprised. Dr. Song told you this? He must have his reasons. My dear granddaughter, go to the back of the ice and snow villa and take a rest now. Wu Qian laughed and said, Grandpa, I feel very well now. Although Song Feng is a miracle doctor, he can also make mistakes. Last time, he told me not to eat ice cream or drink cold water, and now he won't let me ski. He's really nosy, and is not my husband. Wu Dongliang also laughed loudly, sighed and said, yeah, such a good guy, it's a pity that he is already married. The two were laughing when Wu Qian suddenly felt a sharp pain in her heart. Then, her legs began to tremble uncontrollably. Grandpa, what's wrong with me? Wu Qian clutched her chest tightly, her face pale and sweating profusely. Grandpa, my heart hurts so much, my body feels like it's frozen. When Wu Dongliang heard this, he quickly said, Xiao Qian, don't be afraid. Follow the instructions of the little doctor and find a warm place in the back. By the way, I'll call Dr. Song now and ask him to come quickly. Wu Qian walked backwards. At this time, her legs could no longer bend. She could only move forward with her legs straight like a zombie. At the same time, her neck was completely stiff and she could not sway. Wu Dongliang's hands kept shaking. At this moment, he regretted it so much. Last time at Gi Hall, Song Feng mentioned that his granddaughter was in poor health, but neither he nor Lin Jue cared. And now, my granddaughter has really fallen ill in this cold ski resort. Wu Dongliang called Song Feng and started crying as soon as the call was connected. Dr. Song, please save my granddaughter. She is only 25 years old. Please. Song Feng sat in the taxi and said calmly, I'm in the taxi and will be there in 5 minutes. Mr. Wu, prepare a secret room, a stove, and a large steamer for me to use. Okay, I'll have someone prepare it now. Wu Dongliang breathed a sigh of relief. In the taxi, Song Feng hung up the phone and shook his head slightly. Originally, Song Feng planned to wait until Suran was completely settled before treating Wu Qian. But unexpectedly, although Wu Qian did not eat anything cold, she went to the ski resort. It is late summer now and the temperature inside the ski resort is very low, which is more terrible than eating something cold. Soon, the taxi arrived at the Ice and Snow World ski resort. Song Feng paid the money and headed straight to the back of the ski resort. In a luxurious office at the back, Wu Qian was lying on the sofa, shivering all over, and her pores had begun to expel the cold air. Even though the air conditioner in the office was set to 30 degrees, she was still shivering from the cold. At the same time, Wu Qian could clearly feel that her body and internal organs were becoming stiff, including her heart, which began to beat very slowly. Wu Qian knew that she was doomed, so she tried hard to speak. Grandpa, I love you. I may not survive, you must take good care of yourself. When Wu Dongliang heard this, tears fell like rain. He shook his head and said, no, you will be fine. Mr. Song has already come. He will be here soon. At this time, Song Feng pushed open the door and walked in. Walking to the sofa, Song Feng reached out his hand, touched Wu Qian's head, breathed a sigh of relief, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, the cold corpse Gu has not invaded her brain yet, there is hope." When Wu Dongliang heard this, he burst into tears with excitement. Song Feng glanced at the stove and steamer next to him, and said, "Now, everyone go out. Chairman Wu, you stay outside and guard. Don't let anyone come in to disturb you." Wu Dongliang nodded quickly, took his people out of the office and stood guard nearby. In the office, only Song Feng and Wu Qian, who was lying on the sofa in the cold, were left. Song Feng said, "Miss Wu, let me be frank. You are infected with the cold corpse poison, which is a very rare poison. The person who poisoned you is quite powerful. The cold corpse poison lurks in your body. Once it invades your brain, there is no way to treat it. You will become a vegetable like a zombie." Wu Qian tried hard to speak, "I still want Dr. Song to treat me." Song Feng nodded and said, "Since I'm here to treat you. After all, you gave me 1 million last time to pay for the medical expenses in advance. It's just, the treatment process is a little special." Song Feng's eyes first turned to the side before he continued, "If you want to cure the cold corpse Gu, you can only use steaming to expel all the poison through the pores and sweat. During this process, you need to be naked and receive fumigation in the steamer. At the same time, I will needle your 12 meridians to completely expel the cold corpse Gu." Wu Qian was stunned for a moment, then she quickly said, "Thank you Mr. Song for saving me. I just want to save my life now. Everything else is trivial." Song Feng touched his nose and said, "Okay, I will treat you now." As soon as he finished speaking, Song Feng picked up Wu Qian, opened his palms, and with a swish, all of Wu Qian's clothes fell to the ground. Chapter 13 Fight for it. Under the light, Wu Qian's whiteness was so blinding. Even Song Feng had to calm his mind before he could give her acupuncture properly. It is true that a woman's white skin can hide all her ugliness. What's more, Wu Qian is not ugly. Not only is she not ugly, she is also a beautiful woman with a graceful figure. The phrase, white, rich and beautiful, is tailor-made for Wu Qian. Super white, super rich, super beautiful. Fortunately, Song Feng had been exploited by Duan Ran twice in a row before. Otherwise, it's really hard to bear now. More than an hour later, Song Feng inserted 236 needles into Wu Qian's body. Done. Next, we just have to wait for the cold corpse Gu to be slowly expelled. Song Feng said as he stood next to the steamer. At this moment, Wu Qian, who was lying on the steamer, had also blushed red in the face. At first she didn't feel anything, she was just worried about her own life. Later, Wu Qian felt warmth flowing through her body, and her body was obviously recovering slowly. At this time, Wu Qian was no longer worried about her life, so she blushed, and the sense of touch of her skin seemed to become more sensitive. Seeing Wu Qian blushing, Song Feng turned his head and said, "The treatment will take a long time, and it should last until late at night. This cold corpse Gu is very rare, and it can only be taken orally. It is very cold and very unpalatable, and it also smells like a rotting corpse. Think about whether you have eaten anything strange recently." Wu Qian trembled when she heard what Song Feng said, and she said, "It was Aunt Liu. It was Aunt Liu who made it. Half a month ago, Aunt Liu made me chocolate ice cream. It was really unpalatable and smelled bad, but Aunt Liu insisted that I eat it. I almost vomited. I ate it because she begged me so hard. But why did Aunt Liu poison me?" Song Feng shook his head and said, "Since the other party has the cold corpse Gu, their origins are definitely not simple. It would be easy for such a person to kill you, but she didn't do it directly. Instead, she used the cold corpse Gu to torture you. Their purpose should be to control you. I think if your grandfather hadn't met me, he would have died now. If you were also lying in bed and could only be a vegetable, then the other party could use mom to control you and the entire company." Wu Qian's body shuddered suddenly, and her expression became serious. Wu Qian said, "Mr. Song, please help me get the phone. I will ask my grandfather to arrest my mother now." Song Feng went to the sofa, found Wu Qian's phone number, and handed it to the steamer. Wu Qian in the steamer is so white. The blood vessels in the skin are almost all clearly visible. Song Feng put the phone next to Wu Qian's ear and let her talk on the phone. As for Song Feng himself, his eyes couldn't help but fall on the snow-capped mountains. Wu Qian told her grandfather what had happened in detail and asked her grandfather to take action quietly to control Liu Mom's mother. After giving the order, Wu Qian said to Song Feng, "Mr. Song, it's ready." However, Song Feng did not move, and looked at it in a trance. Wu Qian was a little confused. "Mr. Song, Mr. Song. R. R." Song Feng came back to his senses and looked at Wu Qian. His old face turned red and he quickly covered it up. "I'm sorry, I was just thinking about the condition." Wu Qian also blushed, then she chuckled and said, "I think you are not thinking about your illness, but your lover." Song Feng also laughed. He put his phone on the sofa and said, "I'm telling you, I usually stay calm, but this time, you're just too fair. This test is a bit too great, and I can't handle it." Wu Qian snorted, then laughed triumphantly. The two of them had a conversation and it wasn't so awkward anymore. Not long. Wu Qian's cell phone rang. Song Feng picked up Wu Qian's cell phone and put it to her ear again. Wu Dongliang's voice came from inside. After the call, Wu Qian sighed slightly and said to Song Feng, "Song Feng, Mom has confessed that she was the one who poisoned me. However, her purpose was not to control our Qingzhou jewelry group, but because someone threatened her with her son and asked her to find out the whereabouts of the antique jade seal from me." Antique jade seal? Song Feng was surprised. Wu Qian explained, "This is the most precious treasure of our Qingzhou group. Only my grandfather and I know where it is hidden. It is said to be the imperial seal from the Sui and Tang dynasties. It is a real antique jade. I never thought it would bring about such a disaster." Song Feng nodded and said, "If it is really the jade seal, it is indeed possible that it will attract the covetousness of warriors. The other party can possess the Frost Corpse GU, so his origin is definitely not ordinary." Wu Qian frowned and said helplessly, "We have done it very secretly, but we didn't expect that others would find out. I'm afraid that the instigator with the triangle face will not give up. His plan failed this time, and I'm afraid he will use other methods to deal with me and Grandpa next time." Song Feng thought for a moment and said, "You can ask Mom to contact that triangle-faced guy and tell him that the plan has been successful and that they will be able to get the imperial seal soon. Let him come and get it. As long as he shows up, I can help you get rid of this guy." When Wu Qian heard this, gratitude flashed in her beautiful eyes. She said softly, "Mr. Song, thank you so much. Without you, my grandfather, and the entire Qingzhou jewelry group would be finished." The two chatted and made plans. Until late at night. Large patches of black liquid began to seep out of Wu Qian's snow-white skin. After the liquid flowed out and dripped onto the ground, it actually formed layers of frost and emitted a slight foul smell. Wu Qian felt a lot more relaxed. She sat up and discovered that the toxins flowing out of her body could actually form frost on the hot floor. Her pretty face turned pale with fear. No wonder her body was like a zombie. If the body was filled with this strange liquid, even the strongest person would be completely frozen. Song Feng also breathed a sigh of relief. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, smiled at Wu Qian, and said, "It's done. You're healed. You can take a shower and get dressed." It was already past 1 in the morning when the two people walked out of the office. When Wu Dongliang saw his granddaughter come out safe and sound, with her skin even more rosy and healthier than before, he burst into tears of gratitude and held Song Feng's hand and kept thanking him. Song Feng waved his hand and said, "No need to thank me. The 1 million that Miss Wu gave me already includes medical expenses. It's too late. I have to go home. Can you find a driver to take me home?" Wu Dongliang said quickly, "Mr. Song, our Wu family has a lot of idle cars. It's inconvenient for you not to have a car. This Maybach is for you. Please don't refuse it." Song Feng nodded and said, "Thank you very much." Taking the car keys, Song Feng drove the Mercedes-Benz Maybach straight to Wenzhou Community. The community is a resettlement housing complex with narrow alleys, so Song Feng can only park his car on the side of the road outside. He hurried back home. After entering the bedroom, Song Feng discovered that the lights were still on in Su Ran's house. Inside the living room, Su Nanyu and Cao Hongfeng both breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Song Feng coming back. I'm glad you're back," Su Nanyu yawned and went to sleep. Cao Hongfeng took Song Feng's arm and said, "My dear son-in-law, if you come back so late next time, you must tell us in advance so that we don't worry." Then Cao Hongfeng pushed Song Feng into Su Ran's bedroom. In the bedroom, Suran had gauze wrapped around her face and was writing something in front of the computer. Song Feng felt a little guilty. After all, he and Wu Qian had been honest with each other for so long, and his eyes had indeed made a mistake. Song Feng smiled awkwardly and said, Suran, your family is so nice to me. You are still waiting for me so late. Suran raised her head, glanced at Song Feng, then chuckled and said, Song Feng, you may be overthinking. My parents are waiting for you not because they care about you, but because they are worried that you will abandon me and run away alone. Song Feng. Song Feng scratched his head speechlessly. He walked to Suran and asked, What are you writing? Suran said excitedly, It's our Crystal Department Store's investment plan. This afternoon, Grandpa issued a chairman's order. All employees of Crystal Department Store can become business department directors as long as they can sign an agreement with the Wu family to let the Wu family set up the Qingzhou jewelry flagship store in Crystal Department Store. This is an opportunity, I want to fight for it. Chapter 14 Ancient Jade. Song Feng was slightly startled after hearing Suran's words, Wu family. Wu Dongliang. Suran smiled and nodded, Yes, I didn't expect that even you know Wu Dongliang. I heard that Wu Dongliang has turned the corner, so he is going to hold a celebration dinner, and he is also going to expand his business territory and set up a jewelry flagship store. In short, this is a very important opportunity for me. If I can get the order, I won't be bullied by Su Jingmai anymore. Song Feng laughed and said, That's easy. I know Wu Dongliang. Leave this to me. You don't have to write a plan. Just go there tomorrow and I guarantee they will sign a contract with you. Suran couldn't help laughing and said, Okay, Song Feng, go to bed now. I'll work for a while. Song Feng shook his head and said, Suran, what I said is true. You really don't have to worry. Be good and go to bed quickly. Staying up late will affect your appearance recovery. Song Feng turned off Suran's computer and forced her to go to bed. Suran was helpless. She really had no hope for her face. After all, the disfigurement was too severe and the injuries were caused by sulfuric acid, so it is impossible to recover. Song Feng was sleeping on the floor, and soon he began to snore. When Suran heard Song Feng snoring, a smile appeared on her lips, and she fell into a deep sleep soon after. The next day, Song Feng received a call from Wu Qian. Wu Qian said nervously, Mr. Song, the man with the triangle face who ordered my mother to do this has taken the bait. He told my mother Liu to bring the antique jade pendant to the amusement park in the west of the city to trade with him. After listening to Wu Qian's words, Song Feng said, Okay, I understand. I'll go over right away and solve this problem completely. Putting down the phone, Song Feng said to Suran, Suran, I have something to go out for. You really don't need to write a plan. I will accompany you to the dinner tonight, and we will definitely take over the Wu family flagship store. Suran had gauze wrapped around her face. She just smiled and didn't say much. Song Feng left the community and drove straight to the Wu family. When Su Nanyu and Cao Hongfeng saw Song Feng leave, they hurried into Suran's bedroom. The two looked at Suran with anticipation. Cao Hongfeng asked quietly, Daughter, did you sleep with Song Feng these 2 nights? Why didn't I hear any sound? Is Song Feng not good enough in that aspect? Suran was stunned for a moment, then she understood. Her face turned red all the way to her neck. She shyly pushed Cao Hongfeng and said, Mom, what are you talking about? Get out of here quickly. How can you be so frivolous? Cao Hongfeng was anxious and said quickly, Daughter, how is this improper? You have already obtained a marriage certificate, isn't it natural for you to do that? I tell you, daughter, you must seize the opportunity. Men are fickle animals. Even though Song Feng is willing to marry you now because of guilt, but after a few months, he will definitely get tired of you and will definitely leave. You must take advantage of this time to win him over and get pregnant with his child. Suran became even more shy and quickly pushed Cao Hongfeng and his wife out. She closed the bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed, her mind in a mess. Suran clenched her fists nervously, shook her head, and sighed in her heart, how can I implicate Song Feng? If I get pregnant, I will definitely harm him for the rest of his life with my appearance. Oh! Song Feng drove to the Wu family residence. The house is very large and is decorated with jewels and precious stones. As the leader of jewelry and jadeite in Qingzhou city, the Wu family is indeed very wealthy. When they arrived at the backyard, Song Feng got out of the car and saw Wu Qian, wearing a blue and white porcelain-style cheongsam, running towards him quickly. Her exposed skin looked even whiter and more charming against the cheongsam. Song Feng, come with me. Wu Qian naturally took Song Feng's arm and pulled her into the room. After closing the door, Wu Qian took out a basketball-sized wooden box from a cabinet. The box is very exquisite and is carved from golden Nanmu wood. Wu Qian opened the Nanmu box, and a spiritual energy came over her. In the box was a square, emerald green piece of ancient Lantian jade. The jade artifact is engraved with auspicious clouds, flying dragons, and the words, "Destiny is the destiny." When Song Feng saw the jade pendant, he was slightly surprised. At the same time, Song Feng felt that in his dantian, the ancestral witch dragon suppressing tower, which had been silent for 5 years, was actually shaking. Song Feng reached out his hand, touched the ancient jade, and said, "This is indeed top-grade jade. It can be called spiritual jade. No wonder someone wants to use the cold corpse GU to get this thing from you." Wu Qian pushed the Nanmu box to Song Feng and said, "Song Feng, I now understand the truth that it is a crime to possess a treasure. My grandfather and I are just businessmen. Although we bought this jade by chance, it did not bring us wealth, but danger. I want to give it to you." Song Feng felt a little embarrassed and wanted to refuse, but then he thought that this thing was really of no use to Wu Qian. Song Feng put the Nanmu box away and said, "This piece of spiritual jade is indeed very useful to me. Besides, if you hide it, it will be coveted by warriors. This time I will completely help you solve the triangular face problem. As for this piece of jade, I will take it." Wu Qian breathed a sigh of relief. She smiled and said, "Thank you very much, Song Feng. Fortunately, we met you. Otherwise, our family would have been broken up." Song Feng shrugged and said, "What's the time I agreed to meet with Triangle Face? I can go there early to prepare so that he won't run away." 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Wu Qian said, "Besides, he only said to meet at the amusement park, but the amusement park is very big, and I don't know where exactly he will be." Song Feng shook the wooden box in his hand and said, "I will bring this jade with me when the time comes, and he will naturally appear. Oh, by the way, Wu Qian, I also need your help." Wu Qian's beautiful eyes curved up, and she said with a giggle, "Song Feng, we are so familiar with each other, if you have something to say, just tell me directly, why bother asking for a word, it's so formal." Song Feng could sense Wu Qian's closeness, so he didn't refuse. He nodded and said, "Okay, I'll be frank. My wife Suran wants to sign a contract with your Wu family to open your jewelry flagship store in the crystal department store. It's a small matter, no problem." "Wait, Suran. You said your wife is Suran. Is that Suran from Qingzhou University Medical School?" Wu Qian looked at Song Feng in surprise. Song Feng didn't expect Wu Qian to also know Suran. He nodded and said, "Yes, it's her." "You know her too?" Wu Qian sighed and said, "Of course I know her. We were schoolmates. She is the most famous campus beauty in Qingzhou University. As soon as she entered the university, she snatched the title of campus beauty from us and became the goddess of all the boys in the school. She is also known as the most beautiful woman in Qingzhou. In the past, there was even a young man from Beijing who went to Qingzhou University specifically to pursue her. It's just that I heard that she was later disfigured because of her dissolute behavior. And she was expelled from school for misbehavior. I'm sorry, Song Feng, I didn't mean to slander her intentionally." Song Feng frowned, then he smiled and said, "It's nothing, I guess someone just spread rumors on purpose. But she was indeed disfigured, and the murderer hasn't been found yet. By the way, you have to take the contract seriously, it's very important to my wife." Chapter 15 Another Disaster. After explaining everything to Wu Qian, Song Feng took the Nanmu box and went to the amusement park in the west of the city. It was not yet 3 o'clock when we arrived at the amusement park parking lot. Song Feng simply opened the Nanmu box and took out the antique jade seal from it. With both hands holding the jade seal, Song Feng could feel the rich spiritual energy fluctuating violently. Buzz buzz buzz. The ancestral witch dragon suppressing tower in Song Feng's dantian was shaking rapidly, and it was obvious that it was extremely thirsty for spiritual energy. This Suwu Zhenlong tower was discovered by Song Feng at the foot of the Kunlun Mountains. At that time, Song Feng fled all their way to the northwest and accidentally entered an ancient 9-story bronze tower that was 100 meters high. After his blood stained the bronze tower, the bronze tower suddenly shrank rapidly and finally entered his dantian. At the same time, Song Feng was also in the first level of the bronze tower, where he tempered his body with dragon blood, remodeled his bones and muscles, and his strength soared. However, since then, the bronze tower has remained silent, like a dead object. Unexpectedly, the dragon-suppressing tower in his dantian responded again. Song Feng closed his eyes and clenched the antique jade seal in both hands. The next moment, with a buzz sound, the spiritual energy in the jade seal rushed into Song Feng's body frantically. Song Feng felt that his dantian was like a black hole, violently devouring spiritual energy. A few minutes later, the jade seal in Song Feng's hand cracked. The spiritual energy in the jade seal was completely absorbed by the Zuwu Jinlong Tower, without any trace left. Oh my god! Song Feng was speechless for a while. This damn little tower, don't leave me any space. Song Feng shook his head in frustration and put the jade seal away. This priceless jade seal just became waste. At this time, the sound of a motorcycle was heard outside the car window. Song Feng looked up and saw an all-black high-power Yamaha motorcycle parked next to his car. On the motorcycle was a long-legged woman. She was wearing a tight soft leather jacket, with long hair draped over her shoulders and wearing sunglasses. Her figure looked particularly tall and charming against the backdrop of the leather jacket. The woman stopped the car and carefully took out a bag of ice cream from her arms, eating while checking her mobile phone. When Song Feng saw this scene, he laughed. Isn't this woman the little foodie Duan Ran? Song Feng opened the car door, jumped out, walked to Duan Ran, and said with a smile, "Hey, long legs, what a coincidence." Duan Ran was startled when she heard Song Feng's voice. She turned her head suddenly and found it was Song Feng. She was speechless. Duan Ran took off his sunglasses, looked at Song Feng, frowned and asked, "Why are you here? Are you working in the amusement park?" Song Feng was speechless for a while. He coughed and said, "You look down on me too much. Do I need to come here to work? Open your eyes and look behind me. That Maybach is mine." Duan Ran curled his lips and said, "Oh, so you're a gigolo. I didn't expect that the fairy in your dream is actually a rich woman." Song Feng chuckled and didn't continue to explain. He asked, "What are you doing here? You're not going to snatch the bumper car from the kids, are you?" Go, I'm completing an important mission." Duan Ran said proudly, "After 2 days of careful investigation, I finally locked down the whereabouts of those bastards. Today I will avenge my dead colleagues, and I must also expose the true face of my dog boss and bring him to justice." Duan Ran said this while eating ice cream, very confidently. Song Feng looked at the milk stains on the corners of Duan Ran's mouth, reached out his hand, and gently wiped them off for her. I have to say, Duan Ran's appearance always makes Song Feng have some wild thoughts when he eats ice cream. Duan Ran blushed and subconsciously looked around. She quickly pushed Song Feng's hand away and whispered, "Be careful with your movements. If my colleagues see us, they will gossip about us again." Song Feng laughed and said quickly, "Understand, we are in a secret relationship and cannot be discovered by others." Duan Ran snorted and pouted, "Go away, who is having an affair with you? I tell you, the first 2 times were accidents and we had no choice. From now on, we will just be familiar strangers and we must not cross the line. Otherwise, if my grandfather finds out, you will lose 10 heads." As soon as Duan Ran finished speaking, her cell phone started beeping. Duan Ran immediately raised her cell phone, took a look, and said excitedly, "The suspect is here, I have to prepare to catch him." As she spoke, she swallowed the rest of the ice cream in one gulp. Song Feng asked, "What suspects? Are they the ones on the train?" Duan Ran nodded, "Yes, that's them. The 3 pangolin brothers. Last time on the train, I killed one of them, and the other 2 escaped. This time, one of them suddenly showed up for some reason and wandered around in this amusement park. This is the best time for me to capture him alive." Song Feng smiled. Duan Ran jumped off the motorcycle, took out handcuffs from his waist, and prepared for action. Song Feng glanced at Duan Ran's face, his brows suddenly tightened. He grabbed Duan Ran and frowned, saying, "Wait, long legs, your face is not right. Your forehead suddenly turned black and your face was full of death. This is a sign of great misfortune and certain death. You." Song Feng wanted to continue speaking, but Duan Ran covered his mouth with his hand. Duan Ran looked at Song Feng angrily, "You son of a bitch, you're not done yet, are you? You curse me every time you see me, believe it or not, I will sew up your crow's mouth. Song Feng shook his head and said, Duan Ran, I'm not kidding. This time it's really dangerous. Are you underestimating the enemy? The enemy may not be simple. Duan Ran saw Song Feng's concerned look and his heart moved. Although this guy is a jinx, he does get it right every time. After thinking for a while, Duan Ran said, You're right. I shouldn't underestimate the enemy. I fell into their trap on the train. Moreover, they were able to hang out with Liu Lihua. Although they are just thieves who specialize in stealing antiques, I have to say that they should have some strength and background. Duan Ran reached out, touched his waist, and pulled out a pistol. The pistol was unloaded. Duan Ran took out a few bullets from her pants and loaded them into her Type 64 pistol. Picking up the pistol, Duan Ran was full of confidence. She said to Song Feng, It must be okay now. I am a warrior and a sharpshooter. It would be too embarrassing if I couldn't even catch a thief who stole antiques. It's impossible. Song Feng shrugged helplessly and said, Anyway, you should try to be careful. Duan Ran nodded. Without further ado, she picked up her pistol and quickly sneaked into the amusement park. This is a rare opportunity. Pangolins usually hide like mice. After waiting for them to show up with great difficulty, Duan Ran couldn't let them go no matter what. In the crowd, a middle-aged man wearing a black leather jacket and a mask was looking around, apparently looking for someone. Although he was wearing a mask, Duan Ran recognized at a glance that this guy was the triangular-faced pangolin. She didn't hesitate and rushed over quickly. She has already reached the peak of the small Juqian realm and is only one step away from entering the big Juqian realm. She was confident that she could handle an antique thief. Swish! Duan Ran had already rushed in front of Pangolin, and the handcuffs in his hands locked his wrists with a click. Pangolin was startled and his body shook violently. Instantly, colorful and dense smoke came out of his leather jacket. Chapter 16 It's really useful. When Duan Ran saw the smoke around him, he immediately held his breath, stepped back quickly, took out his pistol, and with a bang, shot directly at the triangular-faced man's leg. The man with the triangle face screamed softly and ran away without caring about his bleeding leg. He was very fast and it was obvious that he had already reached the lower level of the Juqian martial arts. When Duan Ran saw this scene, he narrowed his eyes and was horrified. Unexpectedly, the man with the triangle face could hide poisonous smoke on his body at any time. What was even more unexpected was that this mere thief was actually a warrior. Duan Ran was secretly lucky that he had met Song Feng before, listened to his advice, and was prepared. Otherwise, he might have been killed by Triangle Face. Duan Ran chased after him without any hesitation, and at the same time, the pistol in his right hand fired again with a click. With a distance of more than 10 meters, there is absolutely no possibility of mistake for Duan Ran. The triangular-faced man who was running in front screamed and fell to the ground. He was shot in the back of the heart and died completely. Duan Ran breathed a sigh of relief and walked towards the triangular-faced corpse. At the same time, Duan Ran had more doubts in his mind. This triangular-faced guy is clearly a warrior, so why would he be a thief? Although a martial artist of Xiao Juqian is not a master, he is definitely not short of money. If he wants to make money, he can be a bodyguard for someone like Xu Jiayin, which will earn him at least tens of millions a month. How could he steal antiques? Duan Ran walked to the triangular-faced corpse and squatted down carefully. Duan Ran breathed a sigh of relief only after he was sure that this guy was completely dead. She reached out, ready to take the triangular-faced corpse back. However, as soon as Duan Ran's hand touched the corpse, suddenly, a cold feeling came from his fingers. Duan Ran quickly retracted her hand. She looked at her fingers, which had turned black. At the same time, the black color was still spreading rapidly along her arms and upwards. What the hell? Duan Ran's face suddenly changed. At this time, Song Feng's calm voice came from behind, This is corpse poison. It's very difficult to deal with. You have to soak it in glutinous rice water and take rooster blood to slowly force the poison out. Duan Ran turned around suddenly and looked at Song Feng. Song Feng shrugged and said, Don't be nervous, you won't die for now. But if you hadn't met me, the outcome would be uncertain. After all, there are not many people who can completely eliminate corpse poison. Song Feng picked up Duan Ran with one hand and lifted the triangular-faced corpse with the other hand and walked towards the parking lot. Be careful. Duan Ran reminded quickly. Song Feng said nonchalantly, "Don't worry, I have a special physique. Even if this guy's corpse poison is 100 times stronger, it can't hurt me." As Song Feng was talking, he had already arrived next to the Maybach. He threw the triangular-faced man's body into the trunk and put Duan Ran in the passenger seat. Duan Ran was getting weaker and weaker. She looked at Song Feng and said, "Thank you, Song Feng. I'm sorry to bother you again this time." Song Feng stepped on the accelerator and drove away from the amusement park. He smiled and said, "I just found out that the guy you killed is the guy I want to deal with. So, you kill Triangle Face and I save you. We are even. However, you have to pay for the glutinous rice and rooster blood." Duan Ran was speechless after hearing this. I know. I'm about to die, and you're still fussing over who's going to pay for these few dollars." Song Feng laughed. He drove to the vegetable market and bought 100 kilograms of glutinous rice. However, rooster blood is difficult to buy. You have to go to the live chicken market. But those chicken markets are only open in the morning, and now it's evening and they have already closed. Duan Ran, who was sitting in the passenger seat, so that Song Feng couldn't buy rooster blood, and asked worriedly, "Song Feng, what should I do if I can't buy rooster blood? I won't die, will I?" Song Feng waved his hand and said, "Forget it if you can't buy it. Use my blood first." "What? Your blood? Stop it." Duan Ran glared at Song Feng speechlessly. Song Feng patted his chest and said, "My blood is much more powerful than rooster blood. You are lucky to have the opportunity to drink my blood. Other women can't get it. Mine is dragon blood. Bar. Who is willing to eat your essence and blood?" Duan Ran said angrily. But then, Duan Ran realized that his words were a bit ambiguous. It seemed that he was going to use all of Song Feng's essence and blood. Song Feng said quickly, "Where is your home? Let's go there quickly." Duan Ran did not refuse. After all, she felt herself getting weaker and weaker, and the black energy on her arm had already invaded her neck. "If I delay any longer, I'm afraid I will really become a corpse." Duan Ran told the address. Song Feng stepped on the accelerator and quickly rushed to Duan Ran's home. Duan Ran lives in a villa on the hillside of Fengming community. Although the villa is not big, it has a quiet environment, a small courtyard and a basement, and is very luxuriously decorated. It is really a luxury for one person to live in. Song Feng held Duan Ran and quickly entered Duan Ran's bedroom. When he got to the bathtub, Song Feng put all the glutinous rice he had bought into it. Add another large basin of warm water. He picked up Duan Ran, tore all her clothes into pieces, and then threw Duan Ran into the glutinous rice water. Duan Ran felt a warmth around him, and black mist quickly rose up on his skin. So magical. Duan Ran forgot to be shy. She sat up and looked at her body in surprise. Duan Ran muttered, "I didn't expect that using sticky rice to fight zombies as shown in the movie is actually real." Song Feng laughed and said, "Of course. I haven't seen you for 2 days, and I found that you have grown bigger again." Duan Ran was stunned, then she glared at Song Feng angrily, "I'm almost dead, and you still have the mood to look around. By the way, didn't you say you still want your blood essence? Then I'll take it." Duan Ran pounced directly on Song Feng's body, opened his mouth, and bit Song Feng's shoulder. Song Feng cried out in pain. Duan Ran smiled triumphantly. She bit her skin and took a sip. The next moment, Duan Ran felt as if a ball of fire surged into his mouth. The fire went down his esophagus and into his stomach, and then boomed down, sweeping across his entire body. Damn! Duan Ran screamed subconsciously. She quickly dodged and looked at Song Feng in surprise. Song Feng was speechless, muttering, "You are born in the year of the dog. You actually bit me. Look, what a waste." Duan Ran swallowed hard. She lowered her head and looked at her arm. The black lines of corpse poison on the arm completely disappeared in an instant. At the same time, Duan Ran no longer felt weak. She felt as if there was a ball of fire in her dantian, and the bottleneck of her cultivation was actually loosened at this moment. "Song Feng, your blood is indeed very useful," Duan Ran said. Song Feng laughed, "Of course." Duan Ran walked over and took the initiative to hug Song Feng's neck, with a cunning light flashing in her eyes. "You didn't lie to me, your blood is very effective. Now that I have tasted your blood, I want to try the other part." As he spoke, Duan Ran pulled Song Feng and fell into the bathtub full of glutinous rice. Chapter 17. Are you worthy? Song Feng was helpless. He really just wanted to cure Duan Ran of the corpse poison. But I never expected that Duan Ran was so greedy. She has to eat it. She has to eat it. Song Feng could only silently obey Duan Ran's idea. At this time, inside the playground, Liu Lihua, dressed in black, wearing a mask, sunglasses and a baseball cap, quietly approached the place where Triangle Face died. He silently glanced at the scene, then immediately retreated quietly, perfectly avoiding all surveillance. Liu Lihua returned to his car, his eyes narrowed. He lit a cigarette and savored the bitter feeling of nicotine flowing through his throat. My good disciple, you are so cautious in doing things. You even made Triangle Face fall into your hands. Liu Lihua blew out a smoke ring and muttered to himself, you are indeed a good candidate, but unfortunately, someone above has taken a fancy to you, and I can't keep you. Now it seems that I have to do it myself. Liu Lihua opened his mouth and stuffed the entire cigarette into his mouth. He chewed it bit by bit, with cruelty in his eyes. Xiao Ran, I told you long ago that life is so helpless. Even if you have a prominent family background, you will not have any power to resist the supreme darkness. Liu Lihua drove away quickly. The other side. In Unju community. Suran took the project plan he had carefully prepared and took a deep breath. She looked at the time and saw that the Su family dinner was about to begin. However, Song Feng has not come back yet. Suran gave a slight bitter smile. Yesterday, Song Feng swore that he knew Wu Dongliang. Now, no one can be seen. However, Suran had not expected Song Feng to establish a relationship with the Wu family. In the end, it all depends on yourself. Suran went to the closet, picked out a light white long dress, and put it on quickly. Standing in front of the mirror, Suran looked at the slim woman in the mirror. Indeed, in the 5 years since my disfigurement, I have rarely worn skirts, and I no longer dress up deliberately. Now, I put on the dress I hadn't worn for a long time, and I was still beautiful. But my face could never be restored to the way it was in my memory. Looking at the gauze wrapped around his face, Suran smiled bitterly. She quickly calmed herself down, took the contract and project book, and went out to take a taxi and head straight to the Wu family banquet. The banquet will be held in the Wu family's Qingzhou manor. Qingzhou manor was decorated very luxuriously, with neon lights and jewels hanging all over the courtyard, shining brightly. Wu Dongliang's resurrection this time is also the starting point of a new journey for the entire Qingzhou jewelry group. Suran arrived at the door, carrying her bag, and was about to walk inside. The security guard at the door stopped Suran and said, "Hello, please show me your invitation letter." Huh? Do you still need an invitation letter? Suran was stunned. At this moment, a laugh came from behind. Har har har, this really makes me laugh to death. You, an ugly freak, actually have such wild ideas that you even want to come to the Wu family's banquet to eat and drink for free. Do you deserve it? A woman walked over arrogantly and sneered. Suran turned around and saw that the person standing behind him was Su Jingmai. Su Jingmai took out a gold-stamped invitation from her bosom. She proudly waved it in front of Suran and said, "Ugly freak, see, you need this to enter the banquet. You are just an elevator cleaner, and you want to receive an invitation. You are dreaming." Har har har. Su Jingmai walked into the banquet hall proudly. Suran clenched his fists, then silently unclenched them. She suddenly realized that the chairman's order issued by her grandfather, which stated that anyone who won the Wu family's order at the banquet could become the director of the business department, was clearly just a gimmick. Most of the employees of Crystal Department Store cannot even enter this dinner. So, Grandpa didn't intend to give everyone a fair chance to compete from the beginning. He just wanted to support people like Su Jingmai. Su Jingmai's family is extremely loved by their grandfather. So, after Grandpa got the invitation letter from the Wu family, he must have given it to Su Dengyuan, Su Jingmai and their family. What is the use of trying so hard? Now I can't even enter the venue. Suran felt powerless and frustrated. She sighed, looked at the security guard and said, "I'm sorry, I don't have an invitation letter. I'm leaving now." The security guard felt a little sorry and said, "Miss, you still have a chance to enter even without an invitation. Please scan this QR code and register. If there are guests who haven't arrived yet, you can enter as a standby." Suran nodded dejectedly. She picked up her phone and registered her information. The security guard was stunned when he saw Su Ran's information. Then he shuddered and bowed politely. Your name is Su Ran. Are you the Su Ran from the Su family? Mr. Song Feng's wife. Su Ran nodded subconsciously. I am, do you know me? The security guard quickly said, I'm sorry. I'm short-sighted and didn't recognize you. Miss Su, please come in. Please come in. I'll notify the eldest lady now. Su Ran looked at the security guard in confusion. The security guard had respectfully brought Su Ran into the venue, and then left in a hurry. Su Ran was a little confused. She felt that the security guard was a little too respectful, even a little humble. The banquet hall was full of lights and colors. Expensive jewels, displayed on various crystal tables, are dazzling. Among them, inside the counter in the middle, is a hairpin. The hairpin was made entirely of jasper, clean and flawless. At the end of the hairpin was a string of agate, jade, gold rings and pearls. Under the light, the hairpin emits colorful light, like a dream. The guests gathered around the hairpin and talked about it. This is the colorful hairpin that the Wu family treasures. It's the treasure of the store. 3 months ago, someone offered 30 million to buy this hairpin, but the Wu family ignored him. The Wu family will definitely not sell it. The carving process of this hairpin is too complicated. The master who made it is already dead, so this hairpin will become more valuable as time goes by. Artwork, this is a real work of art. Su Ran took a look at the hairpins on the counter and was amazed. They were indeed exquisitely crafted. However, she was not in the mood to appreciate it. Now she just wanted to try her best to get the contract. Ugly freak, how did you get in here? Su Jingmai shouted angrily. Su Ran was startled and looked to the left, only to see Su Jingmai glaring at her, with a bald man beside her. Su Ran had some impression of this man, who was a senior executive of the Wu family Qingzhou jewelry group. Su Jingmai walked towards Su Ran with a look of disgust on her face. She angrily scolded, You bastard, you even learned how to climb over the wall secretly. Do you know that you are bringing shame to our Su family? You came here without an invitation letter. You are so shameless. You are so despicable. Everyone around looked over. Su Ran was so angry that her voice trembled. I didn't sneak in, the security guard let me in. Also, watch your mouth. I came here for business. Shopping mall business. You want to sign a contract with the Wu family? Har har har, are you worthy? Ugly freak. Su Jingmai laughed wildly. At this moment, footsteps were heard from the back of the banquet hall, and Wu Dongliang and Wu Qian, along with more than a dozen core family members, came hurriedly over. Chapter 18 Too polite. When the guests in the banquet hall saw Wu Dongliang and Wu Qian, they bowed and came forward to greet them. However, Wu Dongliang and Wu Qian acted as if they didn't see anything and walked hurriedly towards Su Ran. Su Jingmai saw this scene. She pointed at Su Ran and said, Ugly freak, just wait, if our Su family commercial building fails to be selected because of you, you and your father will be completely expelled from the Su family. Su Ran was also a little nervous, so she quickly stepped aside. Su Jingmai snorted coldly, and then she said to Qin Cheng, a senior executive of the Wu family beside her, Director Qin, Chairman Wu is here. We are leaving Crystal Department Store in your hands. Qin Cheng, who was standing next to him, stretched out his hand and pinched Su Jingmai's slender waist. He smiled and said, Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Su Jingmai laughed and said, Well, can you introduce me to Chairman Wu now? Qin Cheng nodded and said, No problem. Qin Cheng brought Su Jingmai and greeted Wu Dongliang. However, Wu Dongliang just waved his hand and pushed Qin Cheng away. He strode to Su Ran and stopped. Wu Dongliang suddenly bowed and said, Miss Su, I'm really sorry for not welcoming you in person. Su Ran was startled. Seeing Wu Dongliang bowing to her, she was so frightened that she was in a panic and said quickly, Chairman Wu, you are too polite. Please don't do this. The guests around were all shocked when they saw this scene. What's going on? Why is the jewelry king so polite to that veiled woman? Could it be that the woman is some important person? Her face was covered, so we couldn't recognize her. She must be from the provincial capital. Everyone started talking. Su Jingmai widened her eyes, unable to understand why Wu Dongliang was so polite to Su Ran. Su Ran has been working as a cleaner in a shopping mall for the past 5 years. She is a complete loser. How could such a person know Wu Dongliang? It is even more impossible for her to be treated like this by Wu Dongliang. Could it be that Wu Dongliang recognized the wrong person? That must be it. Su Jingmai suddenly realized what was going on. She immediately stepped forward and said with a smile, "Chairman Wu, you've got the wrong person. This ugly woman is called Su Ran. She's just a cleaner in our Su's commercial building." "Hello, Chairman Wu. My name is Su Jingmai. I should be the Miss Su you're talking about." When Wu Dongliang heard this, he turned his head sharply, glared at Su Jingmai, and shouted angrily, "Shut up! You have no right to speak here. Get out of here!" Su Jingmai was startled when she heard Wu Dongliang's roar, her legs trembled, and she almost collapsed to the ground. Wu Dongliang glanced at Qin Cheng, who was beside Su Jingmai, and said in a cold voice, "Qin Cheng, you don't have to work as a senior executive anymore. Go back and write me a resignation letter." Then, Wu Dongliang turned around and said to Su Ran with a flattering smile, "Miss Su, I'm so sorry that you were wronged in my banquet hall. By the way, we have prepared a gift for you." Wu Qian behind him immediately walked towards the hairpin in the middle of the banquet hall. She took out the colorful and exquisite hairpin and walked to Su Ran's side. Wu Qian smiled and said, "Miss Su, this colorful hairpin is a treasure of our Wu family. It can emit a dreamy glow under the light. In addition, these gold rings, pearls and agates can also make pleasant sounds when they collide with each other. Please accept it, Miss Su." After Wu Qian finished speaking, she didn't give Su Ran a chance to refuse and inserted the hairpin worth tens of millions into Su Ran's hair. In an instant, a dreamy light spread over Su Ran's dress. "Oh my God! It's so beautiful! What does this veiled woman look like? She must be a beauty. That's inevitable. Look at her, without showing her face, just wearing the simplest dress, she's already stunningly beautiful. It's true that jade goes well with a beautiful woman. She looks so beautiful with a hairpin on." The guests around couldn't help but talk. Su Ran was completely stunned. She didn't expect this to be the result. Hearing the discussions around her, Su Ran suddenly woke up and said quickly, "Wait, Chairman Wu, Miss Wu, did you recognize the wrong person? I am just the lowest level employee in Crystal Department Store. I don't deserve to be treated like this. I came here to talk to you about the opening of the flagship store." Wu Dongliang laughed and said, "Miss Su, you are really too modest. Although you are now a low-level employee, your future is definitely limitless. In addition, our flagship store of Qingzhou jewelry will be opened in the Crystal Department Store according to what Miss Su wanted. I wonder if Miss Su has brought the contract with you. Let's sign it now." Su Ran never thought that it would be so smooth. Su Jingmai, who was standing aside, was even more confused, jealous and angry when she saw this. She couldn't stand such an outcome. Once upon a time, Su Ran was a fairy in everyone's eyes. Everyone only paid attention to her and no one cared about her. Even her boyfriend broke up with her in an instant after seeing Su Ran and pursued her. But now, Su Ran has been disfigured and is clearly an ugly freak. Why is she still being treated like this? Everyone only pays attention to Su Ran, and all the gifts and praises are only given to Su Ran. Why? This should never happen. Su Jingmai gritted her teeth. She couldn't stand it anymore. She had to expose the true face of Su Ran, this ugly guy, in public. Wu Dongliang picked up the pen and signed Su Ran's contract directly, and warmly invited Su Ran to sit in the main seat. Su Ran was startled. She didn't dare to sit in the upper seat. She waved her hands and said with a red face, "Chairman Wu, you are too polite. I am really honored. But, Chairman Wu, can I ask you, what is going on?" Wu Qian on the side said with a smile, "Miss Su, you have a good eye. Since you don't want to sit over there, Grandpa and I won't force you, just take a look around. We can talk in detail later when we have time." Su Ran quickly nodded in agreement. Wu Qian and Wu Dongliang left very respectfully and went to entertain other guests. The guests around all moved towards Su Ran. "Miss Su, I'm Xiao Li from Dahua Jewelry Company. Can we add each other on WeChat?" "Hello Miss Su, may I have the honor of having a drink with you?" "I'm Xiao Meng, the boss of Brilliant Games." "Hello, Miss Su. Your figure and temperament are simply perfect. I wonder if I can have the honor to discuss advertising endorsements with you later." Everyone surrounded Su Ran and tried to fawn on him. Su Jingmai couldn't help herself after seeing this. She squeezed into the crowd and said loudly, Suran, congratulations on signing the contract with the Wu family. But why do you have to wear a scarf on your face on such an important day? It's so disrespectful. As Su Jingmai spoke, she suddenly reached out and pulled the veil off Suran's face. Chapter 19, Tacit Understanding. Su Jingmai was extremely proud at this time. She couldn't bear to see Suran enjoying so much admiration and honor from so many people. She wanted to expose Suran's ugliest scene to everyone. After Su Jingmai pulled off the gauze, she looked at the people around her with pride and sneered, "You see, the beauty you are complimenting is actually an ugly and disgusting gossip, ha 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 ha." The eyes of everyone around were all focused on Suran's face, and everyone's eyes widened with an expression of disbelief. When Su Jingmai saw the looks in these people's eyes, she felt even more proud. She thought that it was Suran's ugliness that scared the people around her. At this time, with a gulp, a male boss couldn't help swallowing his saliva. He murmured, "So beautiful, so beautiful. I've lived in Qingzhou for so many years, how come I didn't know there was such a beautiful woman in our Qingzhou city? She is much prettier than any celebrity. If she enters the entertainment industry, she will definitely be a top star." Suran from the Su family. How come I didn't know that the Su family had such a beautiful daughter? If I had known, I would have proposed marriage to my son. Even Qin Cheng, who was on the same front line with Su Jingmai, widened his eyes and almost forgot to breathe. When Su Jingmai heard these discussions, she suddenly felt something was wrong. This was totally inconsistent with what she had expected. Su Jingmai turned her head and looked at Suran. The next moment, Su Jingmai herself was completely stunned. Suran's face was flawless, delicate and beautiful, with no trace of previous corrosion at all. More importantly, her skin was extremely delicate. Although she didn't wear any makeup, it felt smooth and elastic, just like that of an 8 or 9-year-old girl. No, it's impossible, this is impossible. Su Jingmai screamed hysterically. She pounced forward and reached out to grab Suran's face. Su Jingmai shouted angrily, "You hypocritical woman, you must be wearing a mask, a human skin mask, I will tear your face off." Suran was startled. She was also a little confused and didn't understand how everyone reacted. Suran knew that her face was scary, and she knew that once the veil was lifted, it would definitely attract a lot of attention. But the current situation seemed a little different from what she had imagined. Before Su Jingmai pounced on Suran, Qin Cheng had already chased after her and grabbed Su Jingmai's hair. Qin Cheng angrily cursed, "You bitch, not only did you make me lose my job, but now you dare to attack Miss Suran in front of so many people. I'm going to be killed by you." Qin Cheng didn't dare to be negligent and slapped Su Jingmai twice on the face. He was the one who invited Su Jingmai. If Su Jingmai really did something terrible, he would definitely be implicated. Qin Cheng kicked Su Jingmai in the stomach and shouted angrily, "Security, drag this bitch out, quickly." The scene was chaotic for a while. Suran quickly stepped aside, walked to the corner, took out her cell phone and took a picture of her face. Huh. Suran was stunned. "My appearance has completely recovered. There are no scars. Moreover, not only did my skin recover, but it became even better." Suran was shocked at first, then excited. After half a minute, her tears suddenly fell. She had a miserable life in the past 5 years. She thought that she would have to spend her whole life facing discrimination and strange looks, and that she would be an ugly person who was too ashamed to face people. But now, everything is back to normal. "Song Feng, thank you," Suran said in her heart, and at the same time, waves of warmth and sweetness surged up in her heart. It turns out that Song Feng was not bragging. Suran wiped away her tears, looked at the messy conference room, and had no mood to stay any longer. "Now that I have the contract in hand, I can go home. It also makes the parents happy." Suran left the Wu family banquet and got into a taxi. Sitting in the car, Suran dialed Song Feng's number. She wanted to inform Song Feng of the good news as soon as possible. However, the phone rang several times and no one answered. Suran didn't take it seriously. She smiled happily and went home to tell her parents the news. At this moment, Song Feng really didn't have time to answer the phone. Because Duan Ran had no intention of letting him go. In fact, Song Feng and Duan Ran both lack experience, but at the same time, they are both good at learning. Now the two of them have reached a certain tacit understanding. More than an hour later, the two men finally stopped. Duan Ran swallowed it with a gulp. She looked at Song Feng, frowned slightly, and said depressedly, Song Feng, this tastes really bad. Song Feng shrugged helplessly, you insisted. Duan Ran curled his lips and said, I just don't want to waste it. Come to think of it, the first 2 times were wasted. Oh, no, I seem to be about to break through. Song Feng, help me protect the law. Duan Ran said this, and immediately sat cross-legged on the blanket and began to circulate his internal energy. She has been stuck at the peak of the small Juqian for a long time. This was a bottleneck that troubled her for more than 2 years. But I didn't expect that I would suddenly make a breakthrough today. Although the small Juqian warriors and the big Juqian warriors are both in the Juqian realm, their strength and status are incomparable. A small Juqian warrior can only be regarded as a stronger ordinary person, but a large Juqian warrior can already be like Superman, climbing over eaves and walls, coming and going freely. Song Feng sat nearby, looking at Duan Ran who was making a breakthrough, and couldn't help but smile. Life is amazing. He picked up the phone and suddenly his face turned pale. Because Su Ran just called her. Could this be the rumored wife checking up on him? Song Feng racked his brains, thinking about how to make up a reason for not returning home that night. Now Duan Ran is about to break through, and she is naked. I definitely can't leave her. It lasted until the next morning. Duan Ran suddenly opened his eyes and couldn't help but let out a long howl from his throat. Her 2 slender long legs suddenly stood up, and her eyes showed incredible joy. Duan Ran looked at Song Feng and said excitedly, Song Feng, I broke through, I succeeded. Song Feng nodded quickly and said, I know, calm down. The long howl you just made was too exaggerated. Duan Ran was stunned. At this time, there was a banging sound on the wall, and the man in the next room shouted loudly, It's so early in the morning, can you stop shouting so exaggeratedly? I know you are capable, but you can't disturb others' rest, right? When Duan Ran heard this, her face couldn't help but turn red. She looked at Song Feng with a charming look and a hint of anger. Duan Ran hugged Song Feng's neck and said, Your blood is really useful. Thank you, Song Feng. It's not time to go to work yet. How about we do it again? Song Feng waved his hands and said, No, I have to go home. Auntie, I have to save some for my wife. Duan Ran smiled with a red face. She pinched Song Feng's shoulder and said, Look how scared you are. I lied to you. I'm not a casual woman. I promise this will be our last time. From now on, we can't be so shameless again. Oh, if my family or my future husband knew about this, I would be so ashamed to live. Let's go, Crowmouth. If you dare to reveal anything about what happened between us, I will castrate you. Chapter 20 It's not your home. After Song Feng and Duan Ran separated, they drove back to Wonju community. When he arrived at Su Ran's house, Song Feng felt a little nervous. He smelled his clothes from head to toe once again before opening the door. The house was filled with joy, with fruit baskets and painted paper hanging on the wall. In the center of the living room, there was a statue of Guanyin, and in front of it was a burning incense burner. Song Feng was a little surprised and asked, Mom and Dad, what's going on at home? Su Nanyu and Cao Hongfeng walked out of the kitchen. When they saw Song Feng, their faces immediately turned cold. Cao Hongfeng wiped her hands on her apron, walked over and said, Go out. This is not your home, and we are not your parents. Go and get the divorce certificate with Su Ran today. Song Feng was startled and his heart skipped a beat. Could it be that what happened between him and Duan Ran yesterday was known by his father-in-law and mother-in-law? Song Feng quickly said, Mom, please listen to my explanation, the situation at that time. That was just bullshit. Song Feng, don't you think about it? Are you worthy of marrying into this family and being with my daughter? Cao Hongfeng interrupted Song Feng directly. Song Feng was confused. He muttered, Mom, you agreed to my marriage to Su Ran. And I admit that I feel a little sorry for Su Ran, but there's no need to get a divorce. Su Nanyun slammed the table and said, Song Feng, you are also a brave man who has served in the army. Tell me, did Su Ran save your life? Was he very kind to you? Song Feng nodded and said, Of course, Su Ran saved my life. This time I came back to Qingzhou city, not only to seek revenge, but also to repay her. Su Nanyun's expression softened a bit and he said, It seems that you still have some sense. Since you are here to repay a favor, you must not drag Su Ran down. You are no longer worthy of Suran, so divorce her. You should not limit Suran's future, and you should not drag Suran down for the rest of her life. Song Feng became even more confused. Cao Hongfeng crossed her arms and said proudly, Song Feng, my daughter has now recovered her appearance. Moreover, she has become a guest of honor of the Wu family and has signed a big contract. She will soon become the business director of the crystal department store. She will be in a high position and become a superior person. In short, your status is very different now, and you must divorce today. After hearing this, Song Feng finally understood. It turned out that it was not his crime that was exposed, but that Cao Hongfeng and Sunanyan began to dislike him. Song Feng breathed a sigh of relief this time. He smiled and said, Father-in-law and mother-in-law, I already knew what you said. After all, I was the one who cured Suran's face, and I was also the one who made the call to the Wu family. Cao Hongfeng pouted when she heard this, and she said, Song Feng, no matter how you beg or lie, we can't agree to you staying with Suran. If you still have a conscience and still remember how good Suran was to you, then you should get a divorce right away, today. Bang! The door of Suran's bedroom was suddenly pushed open. Suran came out dressed neatly. She was wearing black wide leg pants and a striped t-shirt, very low-key, but full of charm. She had just washed her face, and although she hadn't had time to put on makeup, she was already stunningly beautiful. When Song Feng saw Suran's appearance, he was also a little stunned, and his heart was filled with amazement. Although Duan Ran and Wu Chen are both beauties picked from thousands, they are indeed slightly inferior to Suran in appearance. Suran frowned and said, Mom and Dad, can you please stop making trouble? I can't possibly divorce Song Feng. What do you think of my marriage? Is it a joke? Cao Hongfeng stepped forward and said, My dear daughter, now is not the time for you to act on impulse. Now that you have become beautiful and are the director of the business department, Song Feng, an unemployed vagrant, is indeed not worthy of you. You will not be happy in the future, and Song Feng will become a burden to your career development. Suran shook her head and said firmly, I will arrange a position for Song Feng. Anyway, stop meddling in other people's business. Song Feng, let's go to work. Suran took Song Feng's arm and quickly left the house. When Song Feng saw Suran defending him, he couldn't help but smile. He really did not misjudge her. He was very satisfied to have such a wife. Suran and Song Feng left the community together. Suran said with shame, Song Feng, I'm so sorry, my parents really went too far, I apologize to you on their behalf. Song Feng laughed, shook his head and said, It's okay, I'm very thick-skinned. Anyway, as long as you don't take the initiative to divorce, no one can break us up. I'm like a sticky candy, I will cling to you forever. Suran blushed and giggled. Walking out of the alley, Song Feng said, Get in the car, I'll take you to work. You're the head of the business department now, so you can't always take a taxi, right? Suran was a little surprised when she saw the lights on the Mercedes-Benz Maybach. She turned her head and looked at Song Feng in disbelief. Song Feng, whose car is this? Song Feng patted his chest and said, Mine, of course, is also yours. After all, this is our joint property as husband and wife. After getting in the car, Song Feng stepped on the accelerator and drove straight to Crystal Department Store with Suran. Suran smiled gently. She turned to look at Song Feng, a look of trance and happiness on her pretty face. Suran said, Song Feng, I feel like I'm dreaming these days. Ever since you appeared in my life has changed dramatically, as if I've been blessed by the god of luck. My face has recovered, and I've become a senior executive as I wished. I even have a Maybach to drive me to and from get off work. He, I never dared to think about this before. Song Feng laughed loudly, You are my woman, whatever dreams you have can come true. Suran blushed slightly and pouted, You're lying. By the way, when we get to the company, I'll appoint you as my secretary. I don't need you to do anything anyway. I just need to let my parents know that you have a good job. Song Feng smiled and nodded, Yes, madam, I will do my best. Suran blushed again and covered her mouth while laughing. After arriving at the shopping mall, Suran went directly to the office of Chairman Su Jinkai and took out the contract with the Wu family. Su Jinkai glanced at the contract, then looked at Suran. He smiled and said, Okay. Suran, Grandpa has always been optimistic about you and has been honing you over the past 5 years. Now, you have finally lived up to my expectations. Very good. Next, I will convene a meeting of all shareholders and executives of the entire department store and appoint you as the director of the business department. Thank you, Grandpa. Suran bowed. Soon, all the employees of Crystal Department Store knew that Suran, who was previously cleaning, had become the boss of the business department. He became a powerful executive of Crystal Department Store. Song Feng also got his own work badge. After he joined the company, the first thing he did was to walk towards the office of Su Jingmai, deputy director of the business department. When Song Feng arrived at the office, he kicked the door open and said loudly, "Su Jingmai, I just received a response from Director Su, saying that the office bathroom on this floor is too dirty. Go clean it up. Finish it before lunch, or you will have 5,000 yuan deducted from your salary." Chapter 21, Little White Face. Su Jingmai was so angry that her face turned blue. She never thought that Su Ran could actually sit in a position 2 levels higher than her. Moreover, the director of the business department is the boss of the entire business department and can make decisions on all matters of the entire business department, including personnel transfers. Su Jingmai is just a deputy supervisor and must obey Su Ran's orders. Song Feng looked at Su Jingmai in the office and said, "What are you still standing there for? Are you waiting to be fired? Hurry up." Su Jingmai was so angry that she gasped for breath. She stood up and walked towards the bathroom. The colleagues in the business department around were all talking about it. Su Jingmai used to bully Su Ran every day, but I didn't expect that Su Ran would suddenly become the boss of our department. This is really karma. Have you heard that Su Ran not only became a director, but also became more beautiful? It is said that she is super beautiful, 10 times more beautiful than those big stars. Who is this man? What is his relationship with Director Su? Hush. It is said that he is a gigolo, the husband of our Director Su. This guy is also lucky, he chased Su Ran when she was the ugliest and most miserable. But who would have thought that the ugly wife suddenly turned into a fair, rich and beautiful woman? Oh, how cool. This is the way for the loser to make a comeback, the big winner in life. Song Feng ignored the discussions around him. He went into the bathroom, took out his cell phone, and pointed it at Su Jingmai who was working. "What are you doing?" Su Jingmai turned her head angrily and glared at Song Feng. Song Feng chuckled, clicked a few times, and took the photo. He said, "I didn't do anything. I just felt happy and took a few photos as a souvenir." Har har har. Song Feng left with a big laugh and headed straight towards Su Ran's office. Su Ran is looking through the business department's previous information and business orders, hoping to familiarize himself with the business as soon as possible and get a good start. Song Feng walked behind Su Ran, took out his phone, and said with a smile, "Su Ran, look." Su Ran looked at the photos in Song Feng's phone and saw Su Jingmai angrily cleaning the toilet. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. Su Ran turned around, rolled his eyes at Song Feng and said, "Song Feng, we just took office, we have to keep a low profile. Why did you bully Su Jingmai on your first day at work?" Song Feng laughed loudly. Confucius said, "Revenge should not be delayed overnight. Now that we have the power, of course we have to deal with that girl. Who let her bully my wife before? It makes me sad to see it." When Su Ran heard the name, wife, her heart skipped a beat and her face turned red all the way to her neck. She quickly pushed Song Feng away and muttered, "Confucius never said that revenge should be taken overnight. If you bully my cousin like this, she will definitely find a way to drive me away." Song Feng looked at Su Ran's pretty and shy appearance, and his heart was moved. He stepped forward, held Su Ran's hand and said, "Whether we bully her or not, she will find a way to drive you away. So, don't worry, I'll take care of everything." Su Ran nodded, and then she quickly pulled her hand back like a frightened little rabbit, saying, "Song Feng, go out and play. I need to get familiar with my work as soon as possible." Song Feng left the office. He raised his palm and couldn't help but recall the smooth touch of Su Ran's slender jade fingers. In the toilet. The more Su Jingmai thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt, and the more she worked, the angrier she became. She threw the mop in her hand aside and strode towards the chairman's office. Seeing Grandpa Su Jingmai fell to her knees and burst into tears. "Grandpa, you have to do justice for me. That stinky woman Su Ran made me clean the toilet on her first day in office. Moreover, she promoted her husband to be a senior secretary. This is clearly abusing the power for personal gain." Su Jingmai pulled Su Jingmai up. He liked the eldest brother's family the most, so naturally Su Jingmai was his most beloved granddaughter. Su Jinkai stroked Su Jingmei's hair, sighed and said, "Grandpa didn't want Su Ran to be the director. The position of director was originally reserved for you. Your father and I have paved the way for you and introduced Qin Cheng to you. But now, Qin Cheng has been dismissed by the Wu family, and Su Ran has got the contract instead. Grandpa can't go back on his word and not recognize the validity of the previous chairman's order. If Grandpa breaks his promise this time, no one will work hard for the business in the future. As for Su Ran, as the director, she can make decisions on all matters in the business department. As long as she doesn't make mistakes of principle, Grandpa has no way to remove her from her position." When Su Jingmai heard this, she started crying again, feeling aggrieved. She left her grandfather's office and walked towards her father Su Dingyuan's lounge. "When I entered the lounge, my father Su Dingyuan and my younger brother Su Peng were both there. As soon as she saw her father, Su Jingmai started crying and told a story about what Song Feng and Su Ran had done, exaggerating it. Su Dingyuan was upset when he saw Su Jingmai crying, and said, "Look at how useless you are. Su Ran worked as a cleaner in the shopping mall before, and I asked you to kick her out of the mall, but you didn't succeed in 5 years. You regret it now." Su Jingmai said angrily, "How could I have expected that rotten salted fish would have a day to turn over?" At this time, Su Peng, who was sitting next to him, smiled proudly and said, "Sister, she just got lucky and happened to know someone from the Wu family. We have been running this crystal department store for so many years, how could we possibly let an ugly person like her take over? Don't worry, I have an idea to deal with her." When Su Jingmai heard this, she immediately looked at her brother with joy. Su Peng smiled and said, "Do you remember what happened at Jinyu Company half a month ago?" Su Jingmai frowned when she heard this and said angrily, "How dare you mention the Jinyu Company? The jade articles that company sold to our department store are all fakes. I don't know how you inspected the goods." Su Peng laughed and whispered, "Dad, sister, I won't hide it from you anymore. Actually, I know the boss of Jinyu Company, Da Jin Ya. I owed him 2 million. So, I opened a back door for him when he sent that batch of jade to the department store. But I didn't expect that it would be discovered in the end." "What did you say?" Su Dingyuan frowned, looked at his son, and said angrily, "How dare you do such a thing? That batch of jade is worth more than 30 million. If your grandfather hadn't found out in the end, our mall would have lost so much money in vain." Su Peng said helplessly, "Dad, I have no choice. Da Jin Ya is a famous gangster in Qingzhou. I can't pay him back. He wants to take my arm. I can only agree." Su Jingmai also snorted, looked at Su Peng, and asked, "Su Peng, you said there is a way to deal with Su Ran. Is it related to this big gold tooth?" Su Peng immediately laughed. He nodded and whispered, "Of course. Think about it. That guy named Big Gold Teeth is a scoundrel. He has been asking our department store for money recently. Now, I just need to make a phone call and ask Big Gold Teeth to go find Su Ran. After all, Su Ran is the new director. Do you think Su Ran can handle it?" Har har har. When Su Jingmai and Su Dingyuan heard this, their eyes lit up. Chapter 22, Losing. Su Jingmai stood up excitedly and said, "This 30 million is a bad debt. If Su Ran gave Da Jin Ya 30 million, then she would have violated the regulations of the department store and would be fired or even expelled from our Su family. If Su Ran doesn't give it, Da Jin Ya will not let Su Ran go. At the very least, he will beat her up or even kidnap her and sell her to a nightclub." Su Dingyuan and Su Peng both nodded. Su Peng laughed and said, "That's exactly the idea. No matter what Su Ran does, she will definitely lose." The family of 3 laughed triumphantly. Su Jingmai turned to Su Peng and said, "Su Peng, call Da Jin Ya right now and ask him to come and collect the debt from Su Ran. The sooner the better. I can't stand her riding on my head for even a second." Su Peng picked up the phone and called Jin Wu from Jinyu Company. After the call was connected, Su Peng smiled and said, "Brother Jin, how are you doing recently?" The big gold tooth on the opposite side snorted angrily, "Su Peng, I haven't given up on the money for the 30 million jade articles." Su Peng smiled and said, "Brother Jin, I'm here to talk to you about the 30 million yuan payment for the jade. We have a new sales director named Su Ran. She is in charge of the 30 million yuan. So, Brother Jin, you can come to the mall now and ask Su Ran for it. Also, let me tell you, Su Ran has no power or influence. she used to be a cleaner in the shopping mall. No matter what you do, our shopping mall will not come forward to protect her. Also, Suran is a beauty, and her husband is an unemployed vagrant who just returned from the army, so, you know, he. Hearing these words, the big gold tooth on the opposite side laughed out loud. I understand. All right, I'll go over now. Send me the photo of the new director. Okay, I'll send it to you now. After Su Peng hung up the phone, he immediately opened WeChat and sent the photo to Da Jin Ya. Qingzhou City, Xiangqing District. A 3-story building. There is a huge plaque hanging on the small building, with the words Jinyu Company written on it. On the top floor of the small building, in the office, Jinwu was sitting with his legs crossed, looking at his phone and picking his right front teeth. He is the boss of Jinyu Company, nicknamed Big Gold Teeth. At this moment, with a ding-dong sound, Da Jin Ya's cell phone rang. It was a WeChat picture. Big Gold Tooth clicked it, and then couldn't help but exclaimed, "Fuck." He stood up with a flutter and looked at the picture on his phone in disbelief. The picture shows a recent side view of Suran. Although the photo is not very clear, Da Jin Ya was still amazed when he saw it. This is so beautiful. I'm so blessed, I'm so blessed. Da Jin wiped the corner of his mouth and immediately ordered loudly, "Brothers, get ready, go to Crystal Commercial Building immediately. Let's grab my sister-in-law." Big Gold Tooth, along with his famous 13 guardians, drove an Audi and headed straight for the Crystal department store. After entering the building, Da Jin Ya rushed into Suran's office without saying a word. Suran was still reading the materials. When she saw Jin Wu and others barging in, she frowned and asked, "Who are you? What are you doing in my office?" When Jin Wu saw Suran, he couldn't help but widen his eyes and his heartbeat quickened. He didn't expect that this new director was even better looking than in the photo and 3 times more beautiful than he had imagined. "I really made a lot of money this time." Jin Wu laughed, closed the office door, and said proudly, "Director Su, let me introduce myself. My name is Jin Wu, and I'm the CEO of Jinyu Company. Half a month ago, our company sent us a batch of jade articles worth 30 million yuan, but your department store accepted the goods but didn't pay for them. You must give me an explanation today." Suran frowned when she heard this. She turned on her computer and looked through the business transactions from half a month ago. After looking at it for 3 minutes, Suran said, "Hello, Boss Jin. We did have a business transaction half a month ago, but your batch of jade products were substandard and we have returned them all." "Bullshit." Big Gold Teeth sneered and sat down on Suran's desk. "Boss Su, since you signed for the goods, you have to pay me. As for why you said they were unqualified and returned the goods, I'm sorry, these are all unilateral statements from your Crystal department store. I haven't received any returned goods. Anyway, if you don't pay today, don't blame us for taking you back to ask for an explanation." The 13 protectors behind Big Gold Teeth all burst into laughter. "My sister-in-law is so pretty. No wonder Boss Jin is so anxious. I've never seen such a beautiful girl. Boss Jin, if you get tired of her in the future, can you give her to me as a reward? I'm willing to work for the company all my life. Come on, take my sister-in-law back now, and let Boss Jin have his wedding night today." The group of people didn't take Suran seriously at all. Suran turned pale when she heard these words. She immediately picked up her phone, pointed at Da Jin Ya and the others and said, "What do you want to do? This is the Crystal Commercial Building. I'll call the security guards now." Big Gold Teeth laughed wildly and said to Suran, "Beauty, stop struggling. The security guards in your company dare not interfere in this matter. Of course, you can also call the police to see if it works. This is a debt dispute between us, and as the new director, you must be responsible." Da Jin Ya was very confident because he knew that since Su Peng had already said so, it meant that he had already arranged security for the shopping mall. He is not worried whether security guards or police officers arrive. Su then took a step back and looked at the arrogant Da Jin Ya and others. Her heart skipped a beat and she suddenly realized that this was most likely a setup against her. Crystal Department Store and Da Jin Ya's company have a conflict. Now Da Jin Ya rushes into the company with his men to look for him. That means Grandpa and the others are happy to be a spectator. Happy to throw this trouble on themselves. Suran clenched her hands tightly. She didn't expect to encounter such a difficult problem just after taking office. Sure enough, the position of director is not easy to hold. When Su Ran was nervously wondering how to respond, there was a bang and the office door was pushed open, and then Song Feng walked in lazily. Song Feng glanced at Da Jin Ya and the others and just smiled lightly. He walked towards Su Ran and said, "What's wrong, wife? Are you in trouble?" Su Ran nodded and said nervously, "It was a business deal from half a month ago. There was a financial dispute between their company and Crystal department store. Now they came to my office to ask for an explanation and wanted to take me to their company." Big Gold Teeth looked at Song Feng, and when he found that Song Feng was dressed in ordinary clothes, he burst into laughter. Big Gold Teeth said to Song Feng, "Brother, I, Big Gold Teeth, always like to speak my mind. Today I will tell you the truth. I have fallen in love with your wife and want to cheat on you. If you know what's good for you, get a divorce now. Otherwise, I will beat you so hard that you will have to lie in bed for the rest of your life." When Song Feng heard this, he grinned slightly and turned to walk towards the office door. When Da Jin Ya and his 13 guardians saw Song Feng walking towards the office door, they thought that Song Feng had given in and wanted to escape. All 14 people laughed wildly and arrogantly. Chapter 23 becomes a decoration. Big Gold Teeth pointed at Song Feng and laughed, "Look at the way he runs away, he looks like a dog with its tail between its legs." The other 13 people were also laughing so hard that their stomachs chuckled. This is like giving your wife to Boss Jin. Director Su is such a beautiful woman, only our Boss Jin is worthy of her. When Su Ran saw Song Feng turn around and leave, she was stunned for a moment and couldn't help showing a bit of sadness in her eyes. At this moment, with a click, Song Feng directly locked the door. He did not leave, but closed the office door tightly, then turned around and looked at Big Gold Teeth with a smile on his face. Jin Woo frowned, his face turned grim. "Boy, I just gave you a chance to escape, but you refused and even locked the door. In this case, don't blame us for our heavy fists." Jin Woo waved his hand. "Brothers, go ahead. Beat them to death." Su Ran was so scared that she immediately shouted, "Stop it. I'm calling the police. Stop it now." However, Jin Woo and the 13 guardians of course ignored them. They rushed towards Song Feng and punched and kicked him viciously. Bang, bang, bang. A burst of dense noises rang out. Swish, swish, swish. The next moment, all 14 people of Jinwoo flew backwards and landed in the corner of the office, lying all over the floor. R. Su Ran covered his mouth in surprise, looking at the scene in front of him in disbelief. She had just dialed 110, but unexpectedly, Song Feng had already dealt with Da Jin Ya and the others. The operator's voice came from the phone. "Hello, this is the 110 alarm center. How can I help you?" Su Ran reacted and quickly said to the phone, "Oh, sorry, I called the wrong number, sorry." Su Ran quickly hung up the phone. Song Feng smiled gently at Su Ran. "Wife, cover your eyes first to avoid nightmares at night." Song Feng, okay, I'll hide under the table first." Su Ran didn't persuade him anymore. She now understood that Song Feng was no longer the unarmed boy who was hunted down. In the past 5 years, he had grown to an incredible level. Song Feng walked up to Jin Woo and without any further ado, he kicked him. The sound of bones breaking could be heard, with crackling. "R!" Jin Woo screamed, his face turned pale. He was terrified and finally realized that he had provoked a formidable existence. Jin Woo quickly said, "Master, please stop hitting me. It was Su Peng who asked us to come here. I have no grudge against you or Miss Su. Please let me go." "Oh." Song Feng stopped, picked up his phone, and said, "Tell me everything." Jin Woo didn't dare to hide anything, and he told all the stories between him and Su Peng. Song Feng chuckled, put away his phone, and said, "I'll spare your life today, but since you just insulted my wife, you'll each have an arm cut off. If you dare to do it again, I'll kill you." Song Feng said this without any hesitation and stepped down quickly with both feet. There was a series of rapid click, click, click sounds. Everyone in Jinyu Company had broken bones in their right arms. "Get out!" Song Feng shouted. Jin Woo and others did not dare to complain. Instead, they kept thanking and left the company quickly. Su Ran looked at Song Feng, who was calm and composed, and for a moment she was in a trance, feeling that it was a little unreal. She smiled gratefully and said, "Song Feng, you have changed a lot in these 5 years." Song Feng came over, held Su Ran's hand and said, I am now strong because of you risking your life to save me. Honey, just focus on your work, I will take care of all the troubles for you. Suran blushed, and she whispered, I know. You go out first. I have to clean up the office. In addition, I want to take this opportunity to completely drive Su Jingmai and her family out. After Suran finished speaking, he took out his cell phone, dialed the number of the finance department, and said, Hello, Accountant Wang, our business department has an expense reimbursement of 30 million yuan. Please transfer the money immediately. When Song Feng saw this scene, a smile appeared on his face. It seems that Suran is not a soft persimmon after all. I know I have to kill him while he is ill. On the other side, in Su Dingyuan's lounge, Su Dingyuan soon received news from the financial department saying that Suran had asked for a sum of 30 million yuan on the grounds of business reimbursement. Upon seeing this news, Su Dingyuan laughed loudly and said, Son, you did a good job. That woman Suran really gave in. She just took away 30 million from the company. Su Peng slapped the table and laughed. He picked up his phone and said, I'll call Da Jin Ya. Su Peng excitedly dialed Jin Wu's number. However, after 3 phone calls, no one answered. Su Peng was so angry that he threw his phone onto the sofa and said, What a piece of rubbish. I let him make 30 million, but this bastard ignored me after taking the money. What an ungrateful bastard. What Su Peng didn't know was that Jin Wu was lying on the operating table, waiting for his bones to be set, so he couldn't answer the phone. Su Jingmai said excitedly, Then what are we waiting for? I will go to Grandpa now and immediately convene a senior management meeting to kick Suran, that bitch, out. Su Dingyuan smiled proudly and said, Not only that, 30 million is a huge sum of money, enough to put her in jail for 3 years. The family of 3 laughed triumphantly. They immediately went to Su Jinqi's office and reported to him that Suran had illegally misappropriated 30 million yuan. After Su Jinkai heard this, he was delighted. He looked at Su Dingyuan and asked, Boss, are you sure Suran gave the money to Jinyu Company? Su Peng immediately laughed and said, Grandpa, I'm sure. A man like Da Jin Ya won't leave until he sees the money. He will definitely humiliate Suran before he stops. And now, Da Jin Ya has taken the initiative to leave the company, and Suran is fine, so he must have received the money. Su Jinkai slammed the table and said, Well, in that case, I will immediately convene a meeting of directors and executives. We can't just let this 30 million go. I will deduct it from the dividends of the third brother's family, and kick them out completely. Su Jinkai picked up the phone and ordered an immediate meeting of top executives. Half an hour later. Crystal Commercial Building, the highest conference hall. Su Jinkai sat in the main seat with a serious look on his face. On both sides of him, 36 senior executives of Crystal Department Store were standing on his left and right. Su Jinkai said calmly, Today we are holding an emergency meeting of the highest level because something happened in our mall that is heartbreaking and intolerable. Someone teamed up with an external company to deceive and defraud, and took away 30 million from our company. Suran, what do you think of this? The entire conference room was buzzing with discussion. Suran lowered her head, seeming a little afraid. She stood up and said, Chairman, I just became the director, and I don't know much about these things. Let General Manager Su Dingyuan talk about it. Su Dingyuan smiled coldly. He stood up and said, 30 million is not a small amount. If someone really does something like this, it is not just as simple as firing him and holding him accountable, he will also have to bear legal responsibility. Suran's body trembled, and she seemed very scared. She quickly whispered, But, General Manager Su, if the person who made the mistake is a blood relative of our Su family, the grandchild of the chairman, can't you let him off the hook? Su Dingyuan was even more certain that Suran had taken away 30 million when he heard this. He sighed and said to Suran, Suran, you are too naive. Although most of the shares of Crystal Department Store belong to our Su family, there are still 12 other shareholders on the board of directors, and most of the senior executives of our entire Crystal Department Store are not from the Su family. If we let them off their hook, how can the chairman convince everyone? How can our Su family become stronger and bigger? Wouldn't the legal department become a decoration? Chapter 24 Supervisor Position. Suran looked at the indignant Su Dingyuan, then looked at her grandfather Su Jinkai and the people on the board of directors. She pretended to be helpless and said, Since you all don't agree to let me off the hook, I'll call the police. Suran seemed to be in a difficult situation as he took out his phone and dialed the police number. He quickly said, "Hello, this is Crystal Department Store. Our department store's executives have colluded with external companies and defrauded our company's finances. Please send the police to Crystal Department Store to arrest them as soon as possible." After calling the police, Suran put down his phone. Everyone on the board looked at Suran. At this time, Peng, who was sitting on the side, couldn't help laughing. He said, "Suran, are you out of your mind? You actually called the police to arrest yourself. I see. You want to turn yourself in. That's right. After all, confession is treated leniently while resistance is treated severely. Taking the initiative to call can at least mitigate your crime." Su Dengyuan also sneered and said, "Suran, since you don't plan to resist, then resign immediately and go to prison to serve your sentence." Everyone on the board looked at each other, shook their heads and sighed helplessly. Suran is still too honest. I don't think he's too honest, but too greedy. He just took office as the director of the business department, and he did something like this. It's time to tidy up our Crystal Department Store. Suran heard the discussion. She took out her cell phone and said calmly, "Members of the board of directors and executives of our Crystal Department Store, it is true that someone in our Crystal Department Store colluded with an external company. I have a recording here, please listen to it." Afterwards, Suran opened his phone and clicked on the video, and Da Jin Ya's clear voice immediately came from the phone. Da Jin Ya told everything about his affair with Peng, describing every detail clearly. Everyone on the board of directors was horrified when they heard this. Peng couldn't hold back any longer after hearing half of it. He stood up with a bang, pointed at Suran and said angrily, "Suran, you are so bold that you dare to slander me on the first day you become a director." Suran smiled and said, "Slander? Now that the facts are in place, do you still say this is slander? Your father just said that this kind of thing must not be tolerated and must be thoroughly investigated, no matter who the criminal is, even if he is the chairman's grandson or blood relative. Our company's legal department will investigate to the end. Big Gold Tooth is in the hospital now. When the police arrive and take both parties away, the truth will naturally come to light." At this time, Su Jinkai, who was sitting in the chairman's position, could no longer hold back. He immediately stood up and said, "That's enough. Anyone who makes a mistake must be punished. Peng, it is really shameful for you to do such a thing. From now on, you will immediately resign from your position as the head of the logistics department." When Peng heard this, his face changed and he immediately said, "Grandpa, I can't retreat. I am your grandson." Su Jinkai glared at Peng fiercely, then he looked at everyone in the meeting and said, "Now that the truth has been revealed, everyone should return to their respective posts. We must all learn from Peng's mistakes and never tolerate any mistakes made by anyone." Everyone at the meeting stood up and left, everyone whispering to each other. "I never thought that Peng was colluding with an external company. This guy is so stupid. The Su family is the founder and the biggest beneficiary of Crystal Department Store, but he actually cheated Crystal Department Store of its money. How stupid. Now we're going to have a good show. The chairman's grandson is a traitor and is trying to cheat the chairman out of his money. Har 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 har." Everyone left with a smile. Soon, only Su Jinkai, Su Dengyuan, Peng and the expressionless Su Ran were left in the conference room. Su Dengyuan's face turned pale and he quickly closed the door. Then, Su Dengyuan came over, pointed at Su Ran and said angrily, "Su Ran, you actually deliberately set a trap and embarrassed our Su family in front of everyone." Su Ran looked at Su Dengyuan. This time, she really recognized Su Dengyuan's true face. Su Ran said expressionlessly, "Uncle, this is what I wanted to ask you. It was you who took the initiative to convene the executive meeting, and it was you who took the initiative to say at the meeting that no matter who made the mistake, we would investigate it to the end. Why are you blaming me now?" Su Dengyuan was so angry at Su Ran that he couldn't say a word. At this time, Su Jinkai slammed the table, his face livid, and said angrily, "Enough, enough, don't you think you are embarrassed enough? You have completely disgraced me, the chairman of the board. Look at what you look like now. How can you be so shameless? Su Ran, call the police now and tell them that the case has been cancelled and the police don't need to come." Su Ran nodded and said, "Since Grandpa has spoken, I will naturally not pursue the matter further. However, I think we need to change the candidate for Peng's position as the head of the logistics department. Feng is just the right person. She is my husband and a member of our Su family. It's just right for her to sit in this position. Su Dengyuan couldn't help but curse, bullshit, who is Song Feng? We don't even know him. Why do you make him the supervisor with just one word? And he's the supervisor of the logistics department. Su Dengyuan knew very well that although the position of the head of the logistics department did not seem to have a high status in Crystal Department Store, it was the one with the most benefits. During the time when Su Peng was a supervisor, he was able to make a lot of money for the family every year. This is why, although Su Peng was Su Jinqi's favorite grandson, he was not promoted and instead remained as a supervisor in the logistics department. Of course, Su Dengyuan was unwilling to give up such an important position to Su Ran and Song Feng. Su Ran just chuckled, and then she did not refute. She stood up and said, "Okay, uncle, you are right, but I will not let it go regarding Su Peng's embezzlement of Crystal Commercial Buildings property. As the director of the business department, I have the responsibility and obligation to cooperate with the court's request and investigate this matter thoroughly. Our company's legal department will definitely not let this go. In short, the case will be investigated thoroughly." When Su Peng heard this, his face immediately turned pale. 30 million is definitely not a small amount. He quickly looked at Su Dengyuan and Su Jinkai. "Dad, Grandpa, you guys, please say something." Su Dengyuan didn't expect Su Ran to be so difficult to deal with. He snorted. Although he was very unhappy, he could only shut up. At this time, Su Jinkai stood up and said, "Have you had enough of this? If you have, then it's time to end it. Regarding the position of head of the logistics department, let Song Feng take the position according to Su Ran's suggestion. After all, as Su Ran said, since Song Feng is already married to Su Ran, he is the grandson-in-law of our Su family and can also take this position." Then, Su Jinkai looked at Su Ran and said, "Su Ran, do you have any other requests?" Su Ran smiled and said, "Thank you, Grandpa, for your help and appreciation of Song Feng's talent. I have no more requests." Su Jinkai nodded and said, "Okay, I have no request. Just cover this up. As for the recording, destroy it as soon as possible. Our Su family cannot continue to embarrass ourselves." Su Ran nodded obediently and said, "Yes, Grandpa, I will listen to you." Then, Su Ran turned around and quickly left the meeting room. Only Su Jinkai, Su Dengyuan and Su Peng were left in the conference room. Su Jinqi's face turned gloomy. He slapped Su Dengyuan on the face and said angrily, "You idiot, you were tricked by a little girl like Su Ran. You've wasted your age." Chapter 25 Serving You. Su Dengyuan and Su Peng were even more furious. Su Dengyuan covered his face and said, "Dad, I didn't expect that Su Ran, this little bitch, used to look so weak and pitiful, but now that she has gained power, she has become like a poisonous snake." Su Peng next to him said aggrievedly, "Su Ran was already the director of the business department, and now she has arranged for her husband to be the head of the logistics department. These two positions are the most important positions in our Crystal Department Store, and now they are occupied by the couple. Grandpa, they will be like wild horses running wild from now on. You will no longer be able to control them." Su Jinkai sat back on the stool, frowned slightly, and stroked his chin and said, "It shouldn't be like this. Su Ran has been working as a cleaner in our shopping mall for the past few years. How could she have such great abilities? Suddenly her appearance has been restored, and she also has such strong means and connections. Could it be that her husband Song Feng is not an ordinary person? Perhaps this husband has a great background." Su Peng on the side immediately said disdainfully, "Grandpa, what are you thinking about? I have already found out about Song Feng. Damn, he is an unemployed person who retired 5 years ago. The reason why he married Su Ran seems to be because Su Ran helped him 5 years ago. The whole thing from beginning to end has nothing to do with that loser Song Feng. It's all because of Su Ran. Su Ran is hiding too deeply. This woman is really scary. I think, Grandpa, if you don't guard against it, our Crystal Commercial Building will fall into her hands." After hearing what Su Peng said, Su Jinkai snorted and said, "She's just a little girl, and she wants to fight me. There will be plenty of opportunities to deal with her in the future. Now you should write a self-criticism and send it to the emails of all the company's executives. Write a profound self-criticism to restore the reputation of our Su family." Su Ran returned to the office excitedly and immediately called Song Feng. When Song Feng entered the office and saw Su Ran smiling, he knew that her goal had been achieved. Song Feng walked behind Su Ran and said, thank you for your hard work, my dear. You look so beautiful when you smile. You should smile more often. As he spoke, Song Feng placed his hands on Su Ran's shoulders and gave her a gentle massage. Su Ran's face turned red. Although she was married to Song Feng, they rarely had physical contact like this. Listening to Song Feng's straightforward words and feeling the touch of Song Feng's hands, Su Ran's face turned red all the way to her neck. She hurriedly said, Song Feng, you don't say such embarrassing things. I want to tell you good news. From now on, you don't have to be my secretary. From now on, you will be the head of the logistics department of Crystal Commercial Building. When Song Feng heard this, he curled his lips and said, I don't want this position. I would rather be my wife's secretary, rubbing her shoulders, pouring her tea, massaging her legs, and serving her well every day. When Su Ran heard this, her heart started pounding. She covered her face with her hands and said speechlessly, okay, Song Feng, you are so shameless. Let me tell you, the position of head of the logistics department is very important. The logistics department is in charge of the security team, the cleaning department, and the flow of various consumables. It's a lucrative job. The reason why Su Peng doesn't want a promotion or a raise is that he prefers to stay in the logistics department as a supervisor because he can't bear to give up the lucrative business. When Song Feng saw Su Ran's shy and pretty look, his heart was pounding. He couldn't help but bend down and hug Su Ranheng. Song Feng said, then I want to thank my wife for getting me this position. As a reward, how about we have our wedding night tonight and I will serve my wife well. When Su Ran heard this, she struggled to jump down from Song Feng's arms. She pushed Song Feng with a red face and said, you are a vicious person. What kind of vicious words are you saying? Get out of here. I don't need your service. It's really embarrassing. Su Ran pushed Song Feng out and quickly closed the office door, her heart pounding. Song Feng stood outside the office and said depressedly, we are both married, and you are so shy. Oh, how can we have children? Su Ran said, through the door, who wants to have a baby with you? Go and do your own thing. Song Feng laughed and stopped teasing his wife. Soon, he received an offer for a supervisory position. Song Feng walked into the office of his logistics manager, crossed his legs and started playing with his mobile phone. In the afternoon, Su Ran and Song Feng drove a Maybach back to the dilapidated Unju community. When they entered the house, mother-in-law Cao Hongfeng and father-in-law Su Nanyun were so angry that they couldn't stand Song Feng anymore. At this moment, Cao Hongfeng really wanted to slap herself. After all, it was she who forced Song Feng and her daughter to get the marriage certificate, but who would have known that in just a few days, her daughter not only became as beautiful as a flower, but also became the director of the business department of Crystal Department Store. She regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. Su Ran put down her bag and said, Mom, hurry up and cook. I have good news for you. Song Feng is now the head of the logistics department of Crystal Commercial Building. Don't look down on Song Feng. He has a bright future. Hearing this, Cao Hongfeng pouted and said, it's useless. It's all up to you, Song Feng. You have no conscience. Can't you just let my daughter go? Let me tell you, today I made an appointment with my best friend Qian Ruhua. My best friend's son is a real rich son-in-law. He was born in an overseas Chinese family and graduated from a prestigious Australian university. He is now a senior executive of a Fortune 500 company in Qingzhou City. He is respected wherever he goes. He is the perfect match for my daughter. After he marries my daughter, he will definitely be able to help her in her career. Please let Su Ran go. Song Feng sat on the sofa, just curled his lips and said, Mom, I can also help Su Ran to have good fortune. Cao Hongfeng scolded impatiently, you are of no use to me. Now you have to rely on my daughter. Su Ran immediately pouted and said, Mom, I've already told you, don't bring up this topic anymore. Song Feng and I can't get divorced. In addition, it was indeed Song Feng who helped me. If it weren't for Song Feng, I would have been removed from my position as director today. As they were talking, the doorbell rang again. Cao Hongfeng immediately stood up and said, it must be my best friend who is here. When I opened the door, I saw a man and a woman standing at the door. The woman was wearing a cheongsam, had wavy hair, heavy makeup, and gold and silver jewelry on her body. She was dressed very flashily. Next to the woman was a young man wearing gold-framed glasses, with his hair combed neatly, and wearing a suit. With one hand in his pocket, He looked like a billionaire president in a movie. Cao Hongfeng immediately said, Xiaohua, you are finally here. Chen Ruhua nodded with a bit of pride and said, since you asked me out like this, I must come and see you. I heard that your daughter's appearance has been restored, so my son and I came to see her too. Oh, this is my son. He is now the marketing manager at L'Oreal, the world's leading cosmetics company. Where is your daughter? Cao Hongfeng immediately led the two people into the room and said, Suran, come and meet your aunt Chen Ruhua and your brother Luo Mengqiang. Chapter 26 Soul Sealing Jade. Suran, who was sitting on the sofa, stood up with a look of reluctance on her face and walked over. She nodded to Chen Ruhua and Luo Mengqiang and said, Aunt Ruhua, you are here. Come and sit down. Chen Ruhua and Luo Mengqiang looked at Suran. The mother and son were both stunned. Chen Ruhua was instantly overjoyed. She had seen Suran before, of course, but she knew that Suran was disfigured and looked like an ugly monster. Moreover, Chen Ruhua looked down on Cao Hongfeng's family from the bottom of her heart. If Cao Hongfeng's family did not also have shares in Crystal Department Store, Chen Ruhua would not be willing to associate with her at all. But now, Chen Ruhua finally realized how stunning Cao Hongfeng's daughter was. As for Luo Mengqiang next to him, he was completely stunned, his eyes were wide open, and a burning sensation rose in his heart. At this moment, there was only one sentence left in his mind, I must get this woman. Originally, Luo Mengqiang didn't care about the blind date tonight. After all, how beautiful would a woman with a disfigured face be even if her appearance was restored? But now, Luo Mengqiang realized that he was totally wrong. Suran was simply a fairy from heaven. A woman like this must be his, and he had to get her no matter what. After a simple greeting, Suran immediately said to Chen Ruhua and Luo Mengqiang, Auntie, Mr. Luo, let me introduce you, this is my husband Song Feng. We just got married 2 days ago. You came at the right time. You must stay for dinner to celebrate. When Luo Mengqiang heard this, he suddenly turned his head to look at Song Feng, and found that Song Feng looked sloppy, dressed ordinary, and behaved like a loser. Apart from being a little more handsome, he was not comparable to himself at all. A look of contempt flashed through Luo Mengqiang's heart. At this time, Cao Hongfeng next to him immediately said, Ruhua, I have told you the situation. Song Feng and my daughter did get married, but that was because I was worried that my daughter would not be able to get married, so I let him make do. But in the end, my daughter became beautiful the next day. Although they are married, don't worry, my daughter is still a virgin. Luo Mengqiang next to him immediately said, Auntie, it's okay to be married. I came back from studying abroad and my thoughts are not so conservative. As long as they get divorced, it's fine. I think Suran is too beautiful, and Song Feng is really not worthy of her. When Cao Hongfeng heard this, she burst into laughter. Luo Mengqiang took out a yellow cloth bag from his pocket and took out a piece of jade from the bag. The jade was about the size of a ping-pong ball and was emitting a bright yellow glow. Luo Mengqiang said, Auntie, I came in a hurry and I didn't prepare any other gifts. This piece of top-quality Lantian warm topaz is for you. Wearing this jade can prolong your life and is also good for your skin. Cao Hongfeng took the topaz, fiddled with it for a few times and said, This jade is not cheap, is it? Chen Ruhua on the side immediately said proudly, Of course, how can the gift my son brought out be cheap? Let me tell you, this kind of jade is called yellow fat jade, you will know it by looking at its color and transparency. This kind of jade sells for more than 1 million in the market. Cao Hongfeng was shocked when she heard this and said, More than 1 million. It's so expensive, this is not good, right? Luo Mengqiang immediately smiled and said, Auntie, this is nothing. You know, I work in a world-class company now and I don't lack money at all. More importantly, when I get married to Sister Suran in the future, I can use my connections to help Sister Suran and increase her influence. Whether it's Crystal Commercial Building or Sister Suran's future personal development, it's all up to me. Cao Hongfeng nodded immediately, extremely excited. Song Feng, who was sitting on the sofa, felt very unhappy. Wasn't this a slap in his face? I'm already married, but this bastard said to my wife in person what he wanted to do with her in the future. Song Feng snorted in his heart. He was just a senior employee in a company. What was there to be proud of? He also knew the chairman of L'Oreal. Even their chairman didn't dare to show off in front of him. Instead, this guy jumped 3 feet high and dared to pry his wife in front of him. Then he looked at the topaz in Cao Hongfeng's hand. Song Feng looked at Wang Yu and frowned suddenly. There is something wrong with this jade. 5 years ago, Song Feng obtained the ancestral witch's dragon-suppressing tower. Not only did he obtain the dragon blood to temper his body from the tower, but more importantly, after conquering the ancestral witch's dragon-suppressing tower, he obtained the complete ancestral witch inheritance and was well versed in the yin-yang witchcraft techniques. Although the topaz in front of me looks very pure, it exudes a faint black evil aura. Song Feng smiled slightly and immediately understood. Seeing Luo Mingqiang still talking, Song Feng stood up, walked to Cao Hongfeng, and said, "Mom, you can't take this jade. If you keep it, you will die within a month." When Cao Hongfeng heard this, she turned around angrily and glared at Song Feng and said, "You have no right to speak here. Either go back to your room or get out and join in the fun." Song Feng curled his lips and said, "What I said is true. There is something wrong with this jade. It is not worth more than 1 million. It is a dead jade." Qian Ruhua slammed the table and pointed at Song Feng, angrily scolding, "Can you talk, you bastard? I'm telling you, you're not worthy of Su Ran at all. Stop occupying the toilet and divorce Su Ran immediately. You are a useless man who can't pay and only knows how to slander. It's really disgusting." Song Feng snorted when he heard this, then he pointed at the topaz and said, "This kind of jade is used to put in the mouths of the dead in Southeast Asia. It is called the soul-sealing jade. In those Southeast Asian countries, many believers were tortured to death, and their resentment lingered, which easily led to some strange incidents. So, the wizards over there will put this topaz into the mouth of the person who died unjustly to seal his soul. This piece of jade is full of evil spirits. Wearing it for a long time will drive you crazy. If your father-in-law and mother-in-law don't believe me, you can try it with some strong liquor. Normal topaz will only become more shiny and translucent after being soaked in wine. However, this kind of topaz containing evil spirits will overflow with evil spirits when it comes into contact with wine, and then the topaz will crack." Hearing this, Cao Hongfeng angrily pointed at Song Feng's head and said, "What nonsense! It's just a piece of jade, but you've made it so superstitious. You're really good at making up stories. You're just talking nonsense to slander others." Su Ran, who was sitting on the sofa, heard what Song Feng said and immediately walked into the kitchen. She brought out a bowl of white wine and said, "Mom, I believe Song Feng. We'll know if there's anything wrong with this jade by just testing it." As he spoke, Su Ran grabbed the topaz and put it in the bowl. The next moment, the white wine in the bowl seemed to be boiling, bubbling up and down. A cloud of black smoke rose up. Then the topaz in the wine shattered into pieces with a pop. Su Ran saw this scene and immediately said, "Mom, look, Song Feng didn't lie to you, did he? I've already told you that Song Feng is not as incompetent as you say." Chapter 27, Kidney Deficiency Men. The scene before them made the entire living room quiet. Qian Ruhua was a little embarrassed, then she pointed at Song Feng and angrily scolded, "I think it's you who did it. How could a piece of jade crack after being soaked in wine?" At this time, Luo Mingqiang on the side was unable to react. Luo Mingqiang immediately apologized to Cao Hongfeng and said, "Auntie, I'm so sorry. I did spend more than 1 million yuan to buy this jade, but I didn't expect there was anything wrong with it. Of course, it is also possible that Song Feng secretly made some moves. Anyway, no matter what the reason is, it's all my fault for not choosing well. I really don't understand these sinister little tricks behind the scenes. You know, I studied very well since I was young. I was promoted all the way to a prestigious university abroad, and then returned to China to work as a senior executive. I know very little about these low-class methods. But this brother Song Feng is very skilled. I have to admire him." After Luo Mingqiang said this, he not only cleared himself of the matter, but also labeled Song Feng as a low-class person. After hearing what Luo Mingqiang said, Cao Hongfeng immediately said, "Oh, yes, I know you definitely didn't mean it. Let's not talk about the jade thing. Let's sit down and prepare to eat. I ordered the 8-bowl banquet from the Red Phoenix Tower. Let's get to know each other well and we will be a family from now on." When Su Ran heard her mother's words, she was so angry that her mouth was about to twist. She snorted and said, "Mom, you are really biased." Song Feng also sneered in his heart. He had not intended to argue with this kid Luo Mingqiang, but he did not expect that not only would he not admit his mistake, but he would also label himself as a low-class person. In that case, don't blame yourself for being rude. Song Feng stood up and walked to Luo Mengqiang. He pretended to be very affectionate and patted Luo Mengqiang on the back. Song Feng said, "Brother Luo, you are really sweet-mouthed but treacherous. You are very skilled in framing others. No wonder you are able to be a senior executive in a large company at such a young age." Luo Mengqiang pushed Song Feng away with disdain. He snorted and said, "Song Feng, stop being so sarcastic. To be honest, do you think you are worthy of Suran? Divorce Suran as soon as possible, and I can give you some compensation. If you continue to make trouble, you will lose face and get no compensation." Luo Mengqiang chuckled and sat down at the table. He looked at ease, and had completely regarded himself as the master. After all, in his opinion, Suran would definitely choose him as her husband in the end. Song Feng sat back between Suran and Cao Hongfeng. Song Feng said to Cao Hongfeng next to him, "Mom, you look down on me and want to choose a new husband for Suran. This is your responsibility and obligation as a mother. I can't say you are wrong. However, you need to be more selective in choosing a son-in-law for your daughter. Look at the guy sitting opposite you. Not only did he use a fake jade to deceive you, but he also looks like he has kidney deficiency. Do you think such a person can bring happiness to Suran? Can he help your family prosper?" Cao Hongfeng glared at Song Feng and said, "Shut up. How can Xiao Luo have kidney deficiency? He works out in the gym every day." Luo Mengqiang also raised his head proudly, then rolled up his sleeves to reveal his biceps. Luo Mengqiang said, "I am a fitness expert. I go to the gym 5 days a week. At this point, Luo Mengqiang's face suddenly changed, and he immediately stood up and said, "Sorry, auntie, I need to go to the bathroom." Cao Hongfeng immediately pointed to a place not far away and said, "Go quickly, the bathroom is over there." Luo Mengqiang nodded and walked towards the bathroom. Chen Ruhua, who was sitting at the table, said proudly, "My son is in great shape. He developed a habit of keeping fit when he was studying abroad. Now he runs 5 kilometers every day without getting red in the face or getting nervous, and without even panting. Honestly, if Suran marries my son, she would be marrying above her station. But I really like Suran's appearance. After all, when they get married, we will be a family. Your house is too small. After they get married, my son will immediately buy you a bigger one." When Cao Hongfeng heard this, her eyes narrowed into lines with laughter. She nodded quickly and said, okay, that's it. Our shabby house is indeed too small." After a long while, Luo Mengqiang came out of the bathroom and sat back on the stool. He drank a glass of water, raised his arm and continued to talk loudly, saying, "Auntie, my second aunt is the sales manager of Sihai Real Estate Company, the largest in Qingzhou city. We will go to choose a house in 2 days, and I guarantee you will be satisfied." Cao Hongfeng nodded repeatedly. At this time, people from Hongfeng Tower brought the food and everyone sat down. Luo Mengqiang was about to speak when suddenly his face changed. He stood up again and hurried towards the bathroom. Song Feng, who was sitting on the side, said while eating peanuts, "Oh my god, it's been less than 3 minutes and you've already gone to the toilet twice. Isn't this called kidney deficiency?" Suran beside him chuckled, then gently pushed Song Feng and said, "Song Feng, stop talking nonsense." Chen Ruhua's face changed drastically, and she said angrily, "Shut up, you bastard. How could my son have kidney deficiency? He might just have a stomachache. Oh, right, he drank too much water before." Song Feng laughed and said, "Really?" Just at this moment, Luo Mengqiang came out. Just as the family was about to start eating, Luo Mengqiang stood up again and ran towards the toilet. Next, Luo Mengqiang went to the toilet every 2 minutes. This time, not to mention Cao Hongfeng, even Chen Ruhua herself couldn't stand it anymore. Chen Ruhua grabbed Luo Mengqiang's arm and asked, "What's going on? Are you having a stomachache?" Luo Mengqiang's face turned pale and he shook his head. He was also feeling puzzled. He didn't know why, but he always felt the urge to urinate and he couldn't hold it back. However, there was not much in the toilet, and the most important thing was that Luo Mengqiang didn't dare to force himself not to go to the toilet. After all, wouldn't it be even more troublesome if he wet his pants? Chen Ruhua angrily grabbed Luo Mengqiang's arm and said, "Since you're fine, don't run to the toilet. Eat your meal properly. Luo Mingqiang nodded. However, within 2 minutes, he was so anxious that sweat covered his forehead and his legs were shaking. He really couldn't hold it in any longer. But for the sake of face, he decided not to go to the bathroom anyway. At this time, Song Feng stood up, suddenly pointed at Luo Mingqiang's pants, and said, "Oh, Mr. Luo, did you wet your pants? Oh my god, you are such a sloppy person. We were eating and you peed your pants. You are still a 3-year-old kid. It's disgusting. You ruined my meal." Luo Mingqiang looked down and found that his pants were indeed wet. His face changed drastically and he felt even more ashamed. Luo Mingqiang couldn't bear it any longer. He stood up suddenly and rushed to the toilet. Cao Hongfeng and Su Nanyan looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. Su Ran's face also turned red. She put down her chopsticks and said, "Mom and Dad, let's go back to the room first. We can't finish this meal. You guys eat it." Su Ran and Song Feng entered the house. Qian Ruhua's face turned red, and she naturally didn't dare to sit down anymore. She pulled Luo Mingqiang and the two of them quickly left here. Su Nanyan glared at Cao Hongfeng and scolded, "Woman, you should open your eyes when choosing a husband for our daughter. Look at this man like Luo Mingqiang. He's only 30 years old and he keeps running to the toilet. Even a 90-year-old man has better kidneys than him. Why would you marry him? Are you going to be a widow?" "Humph,